So, are we ready? I pledge allegiance
to
to
the flag
the flag
The flag
of the
of the United States of
United
America,
America,
and to the republic
Republic,
for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
visible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice for all.
all. I'm not sure that will ever get smooth via Zoom. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember James,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Leaks-May,
Here.
Councilmember Mikulski,
here.
Councilmember Polika,
Here.
and Mayor Piana.
Here. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Leaks-May and supported by Councilwoman James. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Pro Tem Leaks-May,
Yes.
Councilmember Mikulski,
Yes.
Councilmember Polika,
Yes.
Councilmember James,
Yes.
and Mayor Piana.
Yes. So, all right. Next is the electronic meeting procedures, which is basically we're in a holding pattern for Opens Meeting Act that enables cities to conduct business, city business over electronic online means, and we are using Zoom. This is will continue on until the governor rescinds the COVID emergency orders. So we're in a holding pattern. We will go through the call to audience directions at that time as it relates to the Open Meetings Act procedures for online meetings. All right, next on the agenda is presentations. And our first presentation for the evening is a recap of the August 4th primary election wrap-up presented by our city clerk, Marty McGrath.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen and get our PowerPoint going. Okay. So I wanted to kind of, this was a very interesting election, as I'm sure you're aware. So I just kind of put together a little bit of a timeline of how our first pandemic election went. So on March 10th, which was the date of the presidential primary election, was when the first cases of COVID-19 were reported in Michigan. And after that, society as we knew it kind of changed. But there were a few communities around the state of Michigan who had elections on May 5th. So some of the school boards in various communities need to have those elections prior to the end of the fiscal year in order for their budgets and tax revenues to work out. So several of the communities who did that either reduced their polling locations to pretty much one location and just worked out of that. And some did curbside voting, which is very similar to what we ended up doing with our drive-through voting eventually. So on June 4th, then Secretary of State sent every registered voter an application for an absentee ballot. So we had our ballots available in late June, beginning of July. And once we sent them out, we held a series of events to do some drive-through voting, which had us setting up the parking lot with a bunch of cones and some barricades. And we had my staff outside along with a battalion of volunteers who were talking to the voters and getting their driver's licenses and having them fill out applications for an absentee ballot, and then coming over to my staff outside, just outside of City Hall, where we would issue the ballots and then bring them back. Yeah, volunteers would bring them back to the voters. So the first few nights were, a little slow, but it picked up. By August 3rd, we had taken in around 3,700 ballots out of the over 6,000 that we issued. And then August 4th was election day, and we got bombarded with ballots. We received 1,215 of the 5,000 ballots that we eventually received back between 4 p.m. on Monday and 8 p.m. on Tuesday. 911 of those ballots actually coming between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. on election day.
Hey, Marnie, could you please put this into presentation mode?
I thought it was, sorry.
Thank you.
No, my apologies. I thought I had it that way. Okay, so election day, as you can see in this lovely photo, we had a few ballots to deal with. This picture was taken on Monday afternoon when we were packaging up the ballots to send them to Oakland County for processing. So altogether, our election day totals were, we had 6,845 voters, which was a 42.55% turnout, which was very similar to what we had in August of 2018, which I'll show you soon. So as I said, altogether, we issued 6,130 ballots, received back 82% of them in total. So 5,000, and actually that should be 10, excuse me, it should be 12 AVs were received. So Monday after 4 p.m. is the deadline to send to, excuse me, is the deadline for folks to vote in person by absentee ballot. So after 4 p.m. on Monday is when we send the ballots that we have collected and processed to send them to Oakland County to be processed on election day by the absentee counting boards. So then, as I mentioned, on election day, those 1,215 AVs that we received were 25% of all of the ones that we received in total, and 20% of all that we received in total came to us between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. on election day, which of course 8 p.m. is the deadline to submit your absentee ballot to have it counted. So that meant we sent out 3,700 plus to Oakland County, but that left us with 1,200 to take care of ourselves. So because of that, and because they all came in so late in the day, and keep in mind, this is our first go around at how to work with Oakland County's absentee counting board. So we had come up with a plan that we thought was going to be suitable, and now I have a new plan. So our election results were confirmed by Oakland County at 11:15, which is obviously late, but with that 900 some ballots that we received at the end of the day, I'm pretty proud that we got them done when we did. But actually, it seemed that late returns were a trend in Oakland County. There were several communities that I noticed didn't have their results until the next morning, which is, I'm thinking that a lot of communities got hit with a similar thing, and I think part of what that is, people are used to voting in person, so maybe they think that they can't return their ballot till election day. So, but let's talk about Ferndale Normal. So, we tried to come up with some implement some innovative ideas to increase voter participation and kind of make it interesting. So as I mentioned, we did the drive-through voting. We did that 4 weeknights. So 2 weeks in a row, we did a Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we did the Saturday and Sunday, not prior to the election. We were open that weekend as well, but the weekend before that. So we serviced nearly 200 voters safely in their vehicles. It was pretty great. Once in a while, we'd have like a whole car full of people. Like 4 or 5 people would be in the car and they'd all get a ballot. And that made us really excited because that's what that whole project was for. So we ended up being featured on Channel 7 News and WWJ Radio. And that happened prior to the last 2 nights that we did drive-through voting. And those last 2 nights were crazy busy. So that was great, and we couldn't have been more pleased at how that turned out. And by then we kind of had our little process in hand. So that was great. So as you may recall, we implemented some drop boxes prior to the August election. And we have one at Kulik Center, one at City Hall, and we also have that small black drop box that's been on City Hall forever. But 77% of those 5,000 plus ballots that we received back were dropped in the drop box rather than returned by mail. So, which leads to the prepaid postage. So those 23% who did return via mail were able to do so at no cost to the voter. We also had online precinct inspector training this time. Due to COVID and the social distancing requirements, we really can't do the in-person the way that we used to. So Oakland County actually implemented an online training course for our inspectors, and they used county-wide, and it also had like a quiz component at the end. So after you've watched the video, there's a, did you retain anything? And if you did, then you get your certificate. And so on top of that, though, I wanted to personalize it more for Ferndale. So I held what I jokingly called a fireside chat on Sunday evening. So I did an hour-long program and just kind of talked to the precinct inspectors about how important this was, why it's important to me, and what I expected from them and what they can expect from me. And I think actually it went very well. It was nice to touch base with everyone, because it does. I'm used to sitting in the front of the council chambers with 100 precinct inspectors in front of me, and I think it was weird for all of us, but we got through it. And then this picture that's on the slide is precinct 8 door hangers. As you may recall, Autumn House relinquished use of their facility for a polling location, rightfully so. In this age of COVID, we didn't want to impose on them any more than we needed to. So that was kind of what the door hangers were about, to keep folks, as a reminder just before the election, hey, don't go to Autumn House, come to City Hall instead. And as it turned out, we got quite a few drive-through voters and folks coming in to vote AV who probably wouldn't have if they didn't receive a door hanger. So that worked out. So some of the lessons that we learned. So the drop boxes were a big hit. Like I said, 77% of all the ballots came through that way. We also have a little on-site drop box that's available while City Hall is open, and a lot of folks come in and use that as well. So, but the big drop box at City Hall was by far most utilized. Every time we told a voter that there was a drop box available at Kulik, they got really excited. We'd always mention that to folks who live over on the west side of town as an option. And the biggest challenge of our night was to handle that number of absentee ballots that we had received after the ballots were all sent to Oakland County. And so 73% of all voters in this election, all Ferndale voters, voted by AV, which meant the other 27 voted in the precinct. So those precincts were adequately staffed for the number of voters who voted on site, but we had lost a lot of folks because, I would never ask someone to do something they were uncomfortable with. And so we lost inspectors, but, we gained some as well. And hopefully, we get everything back into gear for November. There were a few incidents of voters refusing to wear a mask. Most of the situations were handled by chairs. Police assisted in one. Everything went fine. Precinct inspectors were advised to delay closing their tabulators and EPBs until we could get all of those AV ballots that we received between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. over to their precincts, because they need to be tabulated in the precinct after the bulk has been sent to Oakland County. So we as we no longer have the absentee counting board, that's their stipulation. So I've got a series of recommendations. So for the AV ballot processing, I suggest that we continue to keep using the absentee counting board at Oakland County to process our AVs, but rather than do it the way we did this time with a team of inspectors who would process the ballots and bring them over to be scanned, we will be sending these directly to the precincts. So my team will be scanning them in and sorting them at City Hall and doing the audit and reconciliation, but then we'll send them over to the precincts for them to open the envelopes and put them through the tabulator. the optics also of that, of somebody coming in during the day and with a bunch of ballots and putting them into the tabulator, you know, I guess that looked a little questionable, and you know, in retrospect, it's like, yeah. So so that's what my recommendation is for this time. The precincts have more manpower than the clerk's office, so you know, definitely it's easier for them to spread that job over 5 or 6 people than it is for 1 or 2 to handle it and also handle all the other election business at City Hall. So I would throw this out there that if it's at all possible, and it might not be, I would recommend closing City Hall on the Monday before Election Day in order to allow for those last minute AV voters, because we have a ton of them, and getting those ballots organized to get to Oakland County takes up a lot of space and a lot of bandwidth for the clerk's office. You know, there's nothing needed tonight. I'm just throwing out recommendations. Also with communication, we were prepared for, I thought we were prepared for pretty much anything, but we were not prepared for nearly 1,000 ballots to be returned in the last 4 hours of absentee voting. I just did not foresee that. You know, so I think we need to communicate that AV ballots can be turned in any time. You don't have to wait till Election Day. As a matter of fact, the longer that you wait, the longer it takes for us to get the results, because they do have to be tabulated. And even if we were still doing the AV counting boards at City Hall, those would still have to be tabulated. So I don't think we would have been any earlier regardless. But, you know, I think people, maybe they don't know what happens to an AV ballot when they submit it, but they are processed, which means we scan them into the QVF, we compare the signature to the signature on the envelope, and then they are locked away securely until Election Day. So returning absentee ballots earlier allows us to get a hold of voters if there might be some discrepancy, or, you know, that if there's not a signature on it. That happens more often than you would think. People try so hard to do it just right that they'll just, you know, miss the most blatant things, and it gives us plenty of time to let them get that fixed. You know, so voters do not have to wait until Election Day to submit an absentee ballot, and I think that's something that's really going to be important to communicate prior to the November election. You know, so my recommendation with COVID and a shift to the majority of our voters voting AV, more frontline staff is needed to effectively process those and audit the daily input and output of AV ballots. So we used our council chambers as election services, and I think that worked well, but we ended up having to like call in all the troops Saturday, Sunday, and Monday prior to the election just to deal with the influx that we had. You know, in addition to the current staff of full-time staffers, me, Deputy Barb Miller, and election specialist Jordan Smelly, we had 2 extra part-time seasonal election staff, and I would recommend that we get 4, because I don't imagine that this is going to get any less of a thing before November. As far as the drive-through voting, the pilot was very successful. You know, the Wednesdays and Tuesday, Wednesday evenings generally tapered off a little bit later in the evening. So I think if we do it again, we'll kind of base it on the current hours of City Hall's operation. So we did 5 to 8. So, you know, maybe since right now we're 10 to 3, maybe that's 3 to 7 instead of 5 to 8, you know, just so that we can kind of, you know, make sure that it's a little busier all along rather than have folks standing around. So we coordinated with DPW, PD, City Hall staff. You know, there also, again, a heavy reliance on volunteers. We're so fortunate to have so many people out there helping us. But we did have a lot of voters who requested that we continue the program for November. Even people who didn't take advantage of it were like, well, I really hope you're going to keep doing this. So that's pretty great. So this comparison of recent August primaries, now you'll see in 2018, we had nearly as many voters. So in 2018, we had 42.3% turnout, and we had just under 42.6 for this election. So that is exceptionally comparable. But as you can tell, it really bumped up from August of 2016, which is what most comparisons as far as this type of election would be. So, it used to be 23%. That's what we had in 2016. And that used to be high for August primary. Those days are gone. But I think what's most striking is when you look at the next few charts and you look at how many voters voted in the precinct in 2020 and how many voted in the precinct in 2018. And it just absolutely flips between the AV voters this year and the AV voters in 2018. So my estimation was that we were going to have about 70% AV compared to 30% in the precinct. And surprisingly enough, that's pretty accurate. It was a little higher than that. I think I said 73% were absentee voters. So, to meet our team, you've seen us all before. I'm a city clerk. I coordinate the election, order the ballots. I was a member of the Oakland County Election Advisory Council, so I was fortunate enough to be able to have some input on some of the things that went on at the county level. Barb manages our polling locations, assigns our precinct inspectors, and she is our chief cook and bottle washer, meaning that she handles a huge amount of very important but generally routine tasks. So Jordan Smelly, our new election specialist, he's not really new to us, but he's new this full time. So he manages our AV ballot and voter registration program, and he has been our liaison with USPS, which has very much come to be an important role in the clerk's office. And I say he is the herder of cats because he's keeping it all together. And just an army of volunteers, and literally we had so many people helping us. I have a list of them here. I won't read all their names, but these are just some of the folks who helped us with the drive-through voting. We had Summer from DDA and Kelsey from Recreation doing our door hangers for us. It's like, help, I need help, and they're there to help. In office and AV processing, these folks were the ones who, when we needed them, they came in and spent their Saturday, their Sunday, and some of them their Monday helping us get everything together. When I say that we can't do it without our volunteers and our precinct inspectors, I truly mean it. So that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Marnie, I just want to, say you guys did a phenomenal job. That was a long night, but you're looking ways in which to improve the process. But I was very happy that everyone got to. It looked like most people got to vote anyway by how many people we had go through drive-throughs and walk in, and just what was tabulated from the ballot boxes. So I just want to, my hat's off to you guys for doing such a wonderful job. I do want to point out that I didn't see another a volunteer that was one of the listed on the form that you had regarding the precinct inspectors and volunteers. So I want to put a plug out there for Councilwoman Bruner James, because I know you were out there too. Yeah.
Sorry. I knew I was going to forget somebody. It's just like the absentee ballots. Like, it's so important. You forget the most important things.
Right. And in both aspects, the drive-through and work in the precinct. So
yeah. Thank you.
Also, just thank you. Hats off. And I look forward to being right up there helping you guys in November, because I think it's going to be even more active.
Yes, so. We appreciate you all very much.
Yeah, I'd like to spin off of Mayor Pro Tem Leeks May's comments and also compliment the clerk's office on your fine job. I worked the drive-through voting on Sunday afternoon, and I thought that was a really, really great use of our collective time. A lot of people came through. A couple of times we even had a little bit of a lineup, and so I'm looking forward to doing that again in the fall. I also worked at Precinct 4 on Election Day. The veteran election inspectors did a phenomenal job. I did it years ago, like 15 plus years ago in Oak Park. So I was a little bit rusty, and they helped catch me up on some of the new procedures and we had a real poll book back then where you had to write write everything down. And I really encourage folks who are out there watching or listening, or if you know others who are interested, to sign up as an election inspector. I felt very safe in the process. In precinct 4, we had no one walked in to vote without a mask, which was comforting. We had all of the equipment and wipes and things that we needed. And in November, we're definitely going to need extra inspectors. So if you are up for it, I highly encourage it.
Thank you. I also neglected to put Councilman Polika on my list of people. He might have worked harder than any of us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're very sweet. I appreciate that, Marnie. I want to congratulate you and Barb and Jordan, everybody with the city clerk's office for another successful election. I was at City Hall with you all day on Tuesday, working with the AV, and it seemed like we were doing really, really well until 4 o'clock. And then it just seemed like it was just craziness. So yeah, I agree. There needs to be a little tweaks to the system, but I think we'll be able to handle that in November. I will say that we do need to keep in mind that November tends to be a little cooler and less daylight than August. So we might be a little more flexible with those drive-through voting, and I just hope we don't have an issue with volunteers willing to work outside in November.
Right.
But it was a wonderful day, and even when it gets crazy like that, I still enjoy it because it's part of the election process. You know, it's government in action. It's really what it is.
It's really an exciting thing to be a part of.
It is. It is. So again, congratulations.
Thank you.
I am curious. There has been a lot of questions and comments about the U.S. Postal Service and votes coming in, quote unquote, late. And I'm sure that you've probably received any. Do you have any kind of a report of how many ballots came in, on Wednesday or Thursday? Because people thought if they mailed them on Monday, they would get there on Tuesday. Do you have any kind of that report? And is there anything that we can do to encourage people, if they have no other choice to mail early?
Yeah, we actually, surprisingly enough, I think because Jordan had lit a fire under USPS on a multi-daily basis, we had a lot less come in after the election than we generally do. It's just heartbreaking when, like the day after the election, you'll get like 15 ballots, but this time I think we got one the day after the election. We got another one the next day. I was in today, and in our mail there were a couple, just 2 or 3. So, still it's a shame that those folks weren't able to get their ballots in time. But what we have been telling people when we issue them, and we can't really do this in a mail format, but when people come in person, we're always telling them, if we recommend you don't mail it. If you can't get to a drop box, or someone that you trust can't get to a drop box, call us and we'll come and pick it up. And that still stands. I mean, Ferndale is small enough that I would rather run to folks' houses. Colin Moran, our code enforcement officer, has been to so many houses in Ferndale over this election season, because we can't always get out, but he has been super helpful in taking ballots to folks, and all of the paperwork that needs to go with it. He's learned a lot. So what we always recommend, if you do have to mail it, please get it out as early as possible. Like I said, you do not have to wait till election day. I think a lot of people do I think because so many more people voted absentee who never have before, I think maybe they just thought you had to turn them in on election day. But that is not the case. I mean, as soon as you get it, we're required to have them 40 days prior to the election, and we mail them out as soon as we can. So, you should have a good month prior to the election that you have the ballot in your possession, and it can be returned anytime. And the sooner it's returned, the sooner we can get the processing. And like I mentioned earlier, something discrepancy with a signature or something, we can get that taken care of quickly and make sure every vote counts.
Thanks, Marnie. I think what we'll do is we'll have probably another round of communications leading up to the November election, and a lot of these directions for our residents on how to vote will be repeated and enhanced based off of what we've learned. I just wanted to say I appreciate the continuous improvement coming out of the department on enhancing the process, but also just being very flexible and learning and adapting very quickly with the pandemic, but also the change with the statewide announcement of every voter gets an absentee application, which has changed the game with voting in the state of Michigan. And I think it's the right way to go because it should be making everybody easier to vote. And whatever happens with the U.S. Postal Department, disfranchisement of voters should not be federal policy, and slowing down the post office is part of disfranchisement. And I think it's abhorrent what our federal government is doing to the elections. So we will be working with our local congressmen as well as the U.S. Post Office to make sure that ballots are counted in a timely way as if they are mailed. So with that, are there any other questions from council? If not, ready to move on. Thank you so much, Marnie, for the very robust presentation and the stats on our voters. Definitely a game changer in Ferndale.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next presentation, which is an update to council and the community regarding the water meter replacement program and concerns about elevated water bills. So I think we have Finance Manager Candace Giles presenting this, but I also wanted to set up how I'm gonna approach this presentation because this has been a lot of community chatter and resident displeasure and frustration regarding some of the billing procedures and water meter transition. And so as part of this presentation, I am going to be opening up, after the presentation concludes, I'm going to open up questions to council. And then after, I am going to take public comment and have the public ask questions on this presentation instead of call to audience. Even though that's the next agenda item, it just felt like it was too disruptive to end and go into call to audience to continue the conversation. So I know that there's lots of questions and we want to hear from the community tonight. So I'm going to have, I think, Candace, are you ready to begin the presentation? Or city manager, would you? Okay, excellent.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to address the community, speaking to the reasons why water bills are elevated for some and providing the steps our departments are taking to clarify the situation. Next slide, please. So here are my talking points this evening. I wanted to go over, can you go back? Sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. I wanted to go over the water meter and radio replacement program, why we undertook it, and update on our progress. The unexpected water bills, why does your bill look different since upgrading? And how the city is working to help homeowners and businesses with their water bills. So next slide. I wanted to start with some background. The city of Ferndale is about 70% complete with its citywide replacement of the radios linked to the city water meters. This project, which launched in November of 2019, has the city's vendor UMS performing mandatory installations of new radios to replace the chronically malfunctioning radios installed in 2008. Those older radios were all defective coming out of the factory, but the nature of the manufacturing defect meant there were no symptoms of failure until about 10 years later. When I originally started with the city, our non-active radio list for the billing section would be anywhere between 2 to 5 residents. We would send our technician out to replace the batteries and then carry on with the billing cycle. As each cycle progressed, the list of non-active radios increased exponentially. Eventually, it got to the point where we were not able to pull radios off the properties in time to replace them before 10 to 20 more failed. During this investigation period, around the summer or fall of 2019, we had 2 different issues arising. We had chronically failing radio batteries, and manufacturing of the replacement radios was dwindling. This was because our previous vendor was bought out by a larger corporation. The disinvestment in replacements and increased shipping times from outside the country made it clear that we were going to have to act in order to resolve the problem. A full-scale radio replacement for every city property was necessary, and we understood the need for a reliable partner in this. We created a proposal system based on the state selection process for vendors. We were concerned with 4 main areas of impact: radio technology and meter function, product support and customer service, experience and qualifications, and cost to the system. We held a series of interviews with vendors to ensure that proper procedure was followed and that the vendors' values matched the city's strategic requirements. Replacing the radios means an in-person visit to each property, and we don't take this lightly. It requires gaining interior access with cooperation with the water customer. Because the existing water meters were approaching their end of life cycle in 2022, the previous city manager and council decided to move the scheduled meter replacement up to coincide with the large-scale radio replacement. This change decreased costs for the city by avoiding 2 citywide sweeps in 3 years, and decreased inconvenience to the water customers by combining 2 visits into 1. We didn't want to replace radios and then turn around and replace meters a couple of years later. Next slide, please. Because of the defective former radio devices, a small number of residents have been receiving estimated bills for some time, up to 6 quarterly billing cycles in some cases. Next slide. The switch from estimated billing to actual read billing has created the anticipated result of significantly higher or lower bills for some properties, and the finance department has received several questions about it. During the investigation period, residents were receiving no usage bills because the radios were essentially dead. The meters were still functioning properly in the homes, but were unable to communicate the usage to the antenna system. We felt at that time that our only option was to provide a reasonable estimate based on 12 months of water usage at the properties that we were unable to get actual reads for. While we could have added a few more units to each of the estimates, it felt disingenuous to do so in case we would overcharge residents. The problem with estimating is that the longer that we estimate for, the less accurate those reads become. It is why we started the program in the first place, because we recognize the need for accurate readings. Adding to the customer's confusion is the fact that some of them recently received a bill covering a varied period other than the typical 3-month billing cycle. This is an unexpected complication caused by data unavailability during the vendor's COVID-19 work shutdown. While we don't predict that going forward, we have made process changes to ensure that what was once done monthly as part of the billing cycle is now done on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. What was unpredictable with this project would be that it would be ongoing for so long due to the pandemic. We were originally to complete this project in June, with everyone having access to their meter readings on our WaterSmart platform. The good news is that that is coming. I was going to wait until the next council meeting to announce that that platform will be live to residents in mid-September, but we'll be announcing that tonight. Transparency for us is key to this moving forward. We want our users to trust their water bills are correct by giving them the ability to see their usage in real time based on accurate readings. I realize that some residents are concerned about replacing their meters because of the adjustment bill matching the actual water usage to the estimated amounts. Overall, we have been relatively accurate with our estimations. About 5% of those that are changed are seeing a difference in their bill. And this goes both ways. with overestimations and underestimations. Next slide, please. Some people may even see a credit waiting for them on their water usage when they replace their meter. The issue really is that the longer that you wait to replace your meter, the less accurate your estimation is, and it just continues to snowball from there. So if we can have next slide, please. All right, so an issue for us is that we've lost the ability to notify those who may have a home infrastructure problem because we don't have the data available to us if we're continuing to estimate. I want to urge residents to look at their meter dials and to compare them to their last bill. This should help you figure out if you do have an ongoing leak at your property. If you are worried about the expense of the adjustment bill, we have payment plans available to spread the costs out to you if you need. Because the water fund is a self-sustaining fund, we cannot forgive past water usage on individual properties, or that would adversely affect the water rates of other customers. But we are delaying penalties on accounts until at least September as we work through the pandemic timing. We really do want to work with our individual residents. You can sign up for a payment plan online for any reason, not just due to these adjustments, at www.ferndalemI.gov, or you can call us directly at 248-546-2374. I also want to let council and the community know that we have a dedicated staff member fully invested in answering these questions from the community. And we realize how important it is, especially during this time, to feel listened to. As we continue to finish up this project, I intend to be working closely with communications department to make sure that we are communicating on all channels to the public going forward. Any individual account inquiries can be forwarded to me at cgiles, which is CGILES, at ferndalemI.gov, and I'll be happy to look into them. Next slide, please. All right, so I am excited to announce our upcoming WaterSmart software. WaterSmart is a secure, cloud-based system designed to allow our residents to see what we see. It is a free service to the residents to provide you with the best tools to manage your water use and your bill. I intend to bring you an update to this next council meeting to show you what the software can really do. Next slide. I also want to reiterate that I'm here to help. Please email me with any individual account inquiries. My contact info is listed on this slide and on the city website as well. And I will open it up for your comments and questions.
For the comments with council, I would direct them to the city manager as well as the public when we get to that portion, and we'll go from there. I'm going to turn on my light. It's getting dark in my room. It did not turn on. I'm going to start with council. Do you have any questions? At this time?
This is Councilman Polika. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make the statement that I had my meter changed about 10 days after the new billing cycle. So I have not, it was just in June. So I've not yet received my new bill. So I honestly don't know if my bill is going to be higher, lower, or comparable to the previous devices.
We can definitely look into that for you if it's a concern for you.
No, it's not a concern. I was just offering that as information.
All right.
It may be a concern when I get my next bill.
Greg, was your bill being estimated, Greg?
I don't believe so. I think mine was always actual, so I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, if you had actual readings, then you should not have an issue. The biggest part of the issue is coming from the estimated reads from the radios that had quit working.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman.
As far as how we're estimating this, are we doing a monthly rolling average, a full year average, or a monthly year-over-year average?
We are looking at the past 12 months of usage. It felt like that was the most fair way to do it because we look at all of the seasons since it's a seasonal kind of shift.
Okay, so we're doing monthly year over year?
Yes, well, it would be quarterly, but yes.
Through the chair, I think it might be helpful, Candice, if you could just kind of establish the framework for how we bill and quarterly billings. That's also just
Sure.
general baseline.
Absolutely. So in the city, every property gets a 3-month bill, except for commercial properties, which will get billed monthly. So as far as, looking at these from an estimating standpoint, we look at the past year's usage, and then we do an average from there.
Okay.
Is
that data associated with these water bills? Is that available for public scrutiny? Can we see all of this data somewhere?
You can see all of that data online at bsnaonline.com.
Okay. And one last question, I think. What guarantees do we have that the Neptune T10 units are actually functional and that they're not malfunctioning?
Through the chair, I would request that DPW Deputy Dan Tosic address the meter question.
Hi, good evening, Mayor. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So one of the things that we do during the installation process is we run the meters through, multiple data scrubbing, and we're looking for outliers and things of that nature in terms of readings, our files importing properly into BSNA to then get billed out. And then the other thing that we do is we do monitor, not necessarily like we're constantly looking at your individual property. What we're doing is we're looking for continuous flows going on. So if you have water running for, let's say 72 hours nonstop, that's going to raise red flags for us and say like, hey, this is something that we need to look into. Or very high consumption over a daily period. Well, a normal single family resident shouldn't use this amount of water unless they're filling a swimming pool or something like that. So we monitor that stuff, and those red flags pop up during our normal monitoring process. So that's what we'll be looking for, especially with this new launch of our new meters, our new radio devices, and so on. In addition to, we do have the ability to say, you know what, I think this radio is malfunctioning, right? So what we'll do is we'll pull the meter itself, and then we'll do a flow test on that meter, and we'll test that meter to make sure it's calculating properly and that those radio signals are being transmitted correctly. So it allows us to kind of make sure the radio is working properly, in addition to making sure the meter itself is working properly. And this is nothing that's brand new. With our older system, that these are practices that we would look for on a daily, weekly basis in monitoring what's going on in our water system. So, that's why it's important for us to make sure that we have a system that's fully functioning, because we like to look out for things like that. We like to notify residents, like, hey, I think you might have a toilet leak or something like that. Can we come check out what's going on so we can try and, catch an issue before it becomes a large water bill or something like that.
So Dan, on that note, each unit, so for instance, I have a resident who had a water meter go from 84 to 91 as far as their read. Is each unit 100 cubic feet of water? Is that correct?
So in our system, it's a little funky. Each unit equates to 758 cubic feet of water. So it's not directly 1,000, which would be great in a perfect world. So, you would take that unit, multiply by 758 cubic feet, and that's a cubic foot of water that you used.
Okay. So if somebody had a unit go from 84 to 91 in the span of a few minutes with that meter spinning out of control. Is that something that you think should get a flow test?
Yeah, it's something we should take a look at. When you're looking at your water meter, it depends on what digits that you're looking at for the reading itself. So you have a portion of it that is, let's think of it as a stopwatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have seconds that are turning around, and then you have your minutes, right? Well, we don't really look much at the seconds. That's just kind of water going through the meter as it normally would. What we look at is the minute side of things. That goes around slower. And that's where we judge or not judge, but that's where we're looking at our actual units that are going on. So if you have water going in your house, you're going to think of it as like time passing by. As time passes by, our seconds are always rolling along, and then in a minute will come around, right? Same type of concept with your water meter. So if you have water running, your seconds are going, your kind of little mini meter is always spinning. And then as we get towards that next unit of water or that next minute, that is when we're going to cross over into that next digit. So it may look like you're using a lot of water while you're watching your meter spin. In reality, that's not the case. And if anyone, whether it's you think your meter's not reading properly, or you have a high bill, or you think you may have a leak somewhere, that's part of the service that we provide at the DPW with our water service. And, finance department may say like, hey, this resident has a high bill. We may have a leak going on or something like that, or let's try and troubleshoot how we're coming with this number. So, we'll double check and make sure that the unit that's being billed to that customer is the same number that's on that meter. Or if that meter has really hit the fritz, we can do a flow test on those. So our new radios and meters are a solid 10-year warranty, and then a 10-year prorated warranty after the fact. So thus far, we haven't really seen many issues with the new meters and the new radios that have been installed. Ferguson and UMS has been doing a good job at catching those issues as they come across, in addition to what we're looking at and the steps and processes that finance department has put in place to make sure we take a look at why is quarterly bill so high, is this built properly, and so on and so forth, so we can try and catch some of those before they come across.
If I may, through the chair,
Please.
Dan, if there are any issues regarding, say there's a leak or something like that, are you guys, did I hear you say that you're going to actively be looking at that, or will it be just a matter of the consumer coming to you with a complaint? I mean, that's a lot of water meters to be keeping track of to determine if there's some sort of a mistake or some sort of leak. So do you guys have the manpower for that?
Through the council, I'll actually take this opportunity to direct that question back to Candice. Candice, one of the strategies that's coming out of this is the installation of the Water Smart software, which, just like other utilities, allows you to manage and create your own warnings and your own systems about usage. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. And that's actually one of the major reasons why we decided to go with the vendor that we did. We wanted to make sure that, number one, that we had the ability to track that kind of information. We get a list basically on a cyclical basis of, we get alerted to these kind of things. But we also wanted to make sure that if you go out of town for a week and you know that you're not going to be using water, and then all of a sudden you get an alert on your phone to show that you do have water usage at your property, you have the ability to call us, call a friend, call someone, and find out what's going on at your house. I think it's really important, especially living in Michigan, that if your pipe breaks when you're out of town, that you know about it. And so one of the reasons why we decided to go with this particular vendor is that we had that ability to give our residents that power back. It was really important for us.
Thank you, Candice.
Through the city manager, I have a question. I heard some frustration around residents when they tried to call the city. There wasn't a immediate response from customer service, and that compounded the frustration of having a higher water bill and not understanding, and they couldn't get in contact with someone in the typical manner of customer service expectations. Can you talk about that, please?
Sure.
What happened?
Yeah, I'll provide an overview and then I'll allow the finance department to provide any other details should council have them. But back in April, you'll recall we requested a position for a water billing and dispatch position and an election specialist during the budget presentation in April. Council approved both positions. Weeks later, we prepared to post both those positions for openings. And one of our candidates was an internal candidate, Jordan Smelly, who applied for the election specialist position. At that time, Jordan was actually a dedicated resource for managing the water meter transition process. Well, congratulations to Jordan. He was placed as our election specialist, and we had yet to fill the dedicated water dispatch position. In the process of reopening City Hall and transitioning our staff back into City Hall and balancing remote, there was a gap in the dedicated service hours there. And so that gap is now acknowledged fully with the return of the project, because the project was suspended also for the entire length of the shutdown, I think from March till June. And so when the project began underway, we had shared that role temporarily while we were looking to place the position. And so with that, there was a gap. You had a part-time position managing a full-time job. And since then, since we've recognized that there was a gap there, I've now authorized additional hours to fulfill the full-time position while we continue to go through the selection process. That position, actually, we are preparing to close that job posting right now. We are preparing to fulfill the selection process.
Does that mean offer the jobs to someone?
Oh, yes, that, yeah, we're very yeah, sorry.
Okay. Not the selection process is closing, but you're actually offering a job. Yes. Okay. I appreciate that, because having no one answer your phone call, it's certainly frustrating. And I acknowledge that we had a gap on behalf of the city during that time, and I apologize to our residents for experiencing that.
Yes, Mayor, we are accountable for that. We recognize the problem, we've corrected. So you will have a dedicated resource managing those phone calls right now, even in the part-time, until we fill that position, which is in the process of being filled.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council at this time?
I don't think this is a question, but there might be a question folded into it. I decided to pull up my water bill online once I knew this was on the agenda, because I did get my water meter replaced in January, I think it was. And I did experience a somewhat higher bill. Not higher than I've ever had before, but higher than my usual over the last year or so. So for residents who don't do this on a regular basis, you can basically just Google Ferndale water bill pay online and find the link to look up your water bill. And I see that on mine, there are 3 instances where in the read type, it says estimate prior to my water meter being changed. I guess this is a dumb question, but for anyone who can answer it, is this accurate online? Does this establish definitively that I wasn't getting an accurate read for those 3 quarters? So my bill was getting estimated because my radio transmitter was not transmitting?
Through the chair, I'll direct that question to Candice. Candice, can you just talk a little bit about why a bill might be estimated on your, why it might show as estimated?
it would basically be because your radio is down during that time. So I appreciate the Google advice about, Googling. What I would advise against, though, is just because we have another Ferndale in Washington. So just be very mindful that you're typing Ferndale, Michigan. But yes, so the only time that we estimate a bill is if we don't have an accurate read from the system. And that's why we're just really trying to urge people to change out their meters, because we realize how important it is for you guys to have accurate reads on your bills.
So in other words, people can log on here and see if they have been getting estimated bills. It's
yes,
on the BSNA online database.
Yes.
Okay.
And it should be on your water bill as well. It'll show like whatever your read is, and then there'll be a little E on the other side to show that it's estimated.
I have another question. I don't know if this is for Candice or Joe. For the residents who are experiencing 5 months of billing, is that everyone in the system, everyone who's already changed over to meters, or is it just a certain category of residents who switched in a certain month? I don't recall what that is, and how many are we talking about? How many households are impacted by the 5-month billing approximately, if you know?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mayor. And residents who are impacted by a 5-month billing are really residents who were changed right before the pandemic hit and the program was halted, which extended
like March,
so,
February,
Candice,
March.
I'll let Candice go ahead and flesh out the details for that question.
Sure. So we had how we were normally doing it is right before the cycle, I would do a mass meter change out. And then the pandemic struck. And so we decided that it would be better to do that on a weekly basis, just in case. So our last meter change out that I performed was February 24th. And then when our vendor came back to work, they were back in April. April-May timeframe. I don't know the exact date for that, but it would be anybody who really got their meter changed between February and that April-May timeframe. And I realize that that's a couple weeks there, but I can definitely find out that information for you guys and update it. But it would be that timeframe. I know that they did close down their operations during that time as well. So I'd probably have to ask Dan Antasic when they actually stopped the meter replacements, but it was between that time period. And I think it's about maybe 400 or 500 residents, but I can't give you that accurate number right this second. I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the number again?
I believe it's about 400 when I got
400 residents affected. Okay. All right, thank you.
I have one last question. Is there any way that we as a city can just run a report looking through all of these records, looking for any bills that seem like they're abnormally high or any sort of abnormal usage during that time period when things were shut down, and we're assuming that there's been issues with the system, accumulating charges? Is there any way that we can just do that for people so that they're not getting hit with a bill and having to figure it out on their own, so we can proactively approach them?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll direct that question to Cheryl and Candice, and that actually running an outlier report is something that will be part of a function for the full-time position once it's filled. But as I understand it, we do have the capacity to do that.
Okay.
We actually have been doing that portion of that. What we do is we bring in the data into the system, and then the software itself actually lets us know if we have something that is flagged as an overestimated account. What we do then is we will provide with part of the bill, like it's a mailer or a stuffer, if you will, that lets people know about being able to, be on a payment plan and what the reasoning behind why they're receiving such a high estimated bill, or sorry, not an actual bill. We are probably going to be changing that communication. We've been working with the communications department a little bit about making that a little bit more transparent. And so, you know, I think that's another like lesson learned for us, is that we, you know, maybe that's just not enough for people. So we need to be a little bit more proactive with our approach.
This is Cheryl. I would just like to add, you know, prior to the change out of the radios and the meters, it's part of our process to run these reports and look at abnormal usage, look at people that don't have any usage. And before we started estimating, we were running into an issue where a lot of citizens would have zero usage, and then they would get a $29 bill just for their right to serve and nothing additional. So that's when we implemented the estimates to try and help, you know, so people weren't paying a year and a half for $29 bills and then have this big bill. The other problem with just like sorting the section and looking at high bills is $200 might be really high for me, and it might be a normal bill for a family of 5. So we kind of have a threshold. We sort them by amount of the bill, and then we look at everything that's, you know, that wasn't flagged that might be over $1,000 or $500, and make sure that those are things that we're looking into. And as Candice stated in her presentation, you know, when she first started, we had 5 or 10 of those. So it was really easy to get your report and look at it and say, oh, I got these 5 or 10 meters. There's something wrong with them. Hey, DPW, can you go out and check these meters? Give me solid reads. And it didn't hold up the process. Now that we're in, you know, the thousands, we can't do that for the process. It would hold the water bill too long. So we're just trying to, you know, get into a groove that works the best for everybody, and trying to figure out how they can look at their water bill. The Water Smart software is going to be really cool because it's got all the graphs and pictures, and, you know, you can look at it as a line graph, what you're using. You can see if there's, you know, if you're working Monday through Friday and you're home on the weekends, then really your usage should be shorter during the week and bigger on the weekends, maybe when you do your laundry or you eat at home. And those are the kind of things that people are going to be able to see with the new software. So it's going to help us help the citizens by you're able to monitor some of your stuff too. Like if you have a teenage son like I do, you know, and they all of a sudden they're taking 2-hour showers every day, you can monitor that and see what's going on with your water bill and curb that, or put time limits on people, or whatever you need to do. You kind of really adjust it for yourself. And that's our goal going forward.
I think going forward, that's going to be a fantastic thing for us to have. It's just in present day, what we're dealing with is, it's not something that we have to look for a certain threshold, like a $500 or $1,000 threshold as a red flag. It would more be like comparing that time period in 2019 versus that time period in 2020. And if we see a huge jump, like a leap, and again, I highlighted the word outlier report here because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for those cases where something is far above and beyond normal usage. And I know that we're compounding things because we have everybody home and most people are in their home using their water, whereas they might be in an office in normal times, but this isn't normal times. So I get that, but I'm just hoping that there's something that we can do to find these issues, because I have no doubt that there are some issues out there. I don't think all of them are issues. Mine was also higher, but I was home. And I was home with a baby, whereas last year in 2019, there was no baby and I wasn't home. So it is a very different thing. And I do think that a lot of people are getting hit by this bill and they're just stunned because the usage is up, but there's probably a reasonable explanation. But there are going to be some people that probably have a higher bill for unknown reasons, maybe a leak, maybe something else. But that's the kind of report that I'd be looking for so that we can help those people and proactively approach them so that they know that there's an issue there. Does that make sense?
It does, and we do, the software does provide that kind of a report. Those are part of the reports that I was talking about that we do look at every time we do a billing cycle. A billing cycle is between 3,000 and 3,500 homes. And as we go through those, part of the problem right now is when you compound the fact that your radio stopped working 2 cycles ago. So now you might have that leak, but we're not going to have that data because we don't have the actual read from the meter to tell us that data. So once we've switched your radio out and then we get the actual read, now we see it where it could have been a 3-month time frame, but now it could be 6, 9, or 12 months of that faulty read because the radio and the meter have not been swapped out. So it is a part of the way the just normal water billing software works. They do pull out those one-off reports for us to look at and review, and we do review them. But at this point, with having, and Candice can probably give a percentage, but the percentage of radios that we have that have failed at this point in time, it's almost impossible to go through and figure that out.
And if I could just chime in quickly on the DPW side of thing, the continuous flows, the critical consumption stuff, it's a daily alert that we get and that we look at. And it is extremely important if a resident comes home and they have a door hanger from the water department that says something like critical consumption, continuous usage, please give us a call. That is us trying to notify you that it looks like you got a leak somewhere in the house that is going to have a high impact on your water bill potentially. A lot of people don't understand that a small leak, a small drip, if not addressed over a long period of time, can really have a significant impact on your water bill. So, I know in instances where, someone calls a month down the road or after they get their water bill, like, hey, I had this door hanger, but I never said anything, or this and that. That's us, the city, trying to be proactive and say, you know what, we think there's an issue going on over here as far as water consumption goes. Please try and contact us so we can help you find where the leak is, so this can be addressed. So this is not, a burden on you come water bill time of the year or something like that. So it is important to not just, I know it's not the coolest thing opening up mail or door hangers and stuff like that, but when you do get communications from whether it's the city or the DPW, there's reasons behind that, and to please give us a call so we can schedule an appointment, so we can send our service tech out there and see if we can address the issue, identify it, and correct that before it becomes a real problem.
How many times do we notify them?
Typically, we'll notify 2 to 3 times. And then at that point, just with the resources that we have, if a resident feels like they don't need to reach back out after we send our service tech out 3 times to try and notify them that, they have continuous flow going on, a leak or something like that, at that point, we'll kind of disregard. And when that resident decides to call, we'll call back. Unfortunately, we don't have everyone's phone number, so we can't get everyone a call and stuff like that. Perfect world, that'd be great. We'd rather give a phone call than have to send someone out and leave a door hanger. But we do make multiple efforts to try and reach out to someone and get those issues addressed.
Thank you. To sort of close out and follow up on Councilwoman Mikulski's questions about outlier reports, it was mentioned that 400 residents were affected by the replacement meter, but stopped by the pandemic. And I was wondering are we contacting them, or are they the 400, or are they prioritized? How are we managing the caseload so that these residents are at the top?
Through the chair, I'll facilitate that question again. So the question was, are we currently running any outlier reports proactively, knowing what we know now, and are we reaching out to them proactively rather than waiting for them to reach out to us? And Candice,
Yes.
can you follow up with that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I guess we've kind of learned from this whole experience is that you know, we are reaching out to people more actively as we go through this process. Like Dan said, we don't have phone numbers for every single person. So what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to reach them via, you know, their water bill. If we have an email address for them, we'll try to reach out to them that way. And then, you know, we'll make phone calls if we can. A lot of people have been reaching out to us as well, which has been really helpful because we can reach, you know, we can get them the information. I know that the mayor has received several emails from people and she's been directing them back to us. So I do want to like let everyone know that, you know, we're going to be working with communications on trying to get, you know, these FAQs out there for people to be able to see. They are available online for everyone. And I do want to reiterate to people that, you know, most of these are just, this is a one-time bill that is just adjustment from your estimate to your actual. And so we are taking, you know, this very seriously, and we're allowing for payment plans and for all of that kind of information to be available to you online as well, because I know that some people don't want to pick up the phone and call, but we are actively trying to help people as much as we possibly can.
Through the chair, I'd just like to ask the Director of Communications, we've referenced the website. Kara, if you're on right now, can you just chime in on specifically where people can go to navigate to it?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have an article on the homepage of the website, www.ferndalemI.gov. We've made it really easy. We know there's a lot of questions out there. So there is an article that is basically a list of frequently asked questions and answers, as well as links to former news about the program, the kind of history of the program, you know, when it was passed by council, and also link to payment forms. So everything is all easy and in one place, and that is pinned to the homepage of the website. So if you go to ferndalemI.gov, all the information will be right there at the very top.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. See no more comments from or questions from council. I'm now gonna move on to public comment. For a presentation, just let everybody know there is no action that council is taking tonight legislatively or resolutions or anything like that. But we're here to listen. Again, I know this has caused disruption for households, particularly during a very hard time of the pandemic, and budgets are constrained already. And so I just wanted to say on behalf of the city, I apologize for your experience. And I hope tonight's presentation gives you confidence that the city is working very hard and proactively to respond and fix these issues. So moving into public comment, if this is your first time joining us at a city council meeting via Zoom, we follow the Open Meetings Act electronic procedures, and we take comments from Zoom hand raisers. So if you're joining from Zoom, you can raise your hand, and our Assistant City Manager, Kyle Pollette, will unmute you to make your comment. And after we do Zoom hand raisers, we go to those who have phoned in, and we'll do the same as well. And Kyle will read your last 4 digits of your phone number if you've dialed in to recognize the caller, since we don't know who you are, can't see your name. And so as following our public comment, I'm going to ask you to please refrain, keep your messages or your comments to 3 minutes so that everybody has a chance to speak tonight. So with that, Kyle, why don't you go through the Zoom participants for public comment
Thank you,
and
Mayor.
and questions?
First is Kate Thompson. Go ahead, Kate. You should be able to speak.
Good evening, Kate. Thank you for joining
Hi,
us.
can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Welcome.
First of all, I want to say thank you to this council for everything that you have done over the many, many years that I lived in Ferndale. And thank you for sharing your homes with us, because it's been very enjoyable to see your kids, your cats, and your dogs, and all of this. But speaking specifically to the water issue, I was asked to change my water meter early this year, and it showed up on my door handle, and I was given a 6-week period of time that I could schedule an appointment. Under non-COVID situations, I schedule anywhere from 4 to 6 months out. And when I explained this to the person that was handling the phone, they thought this was ridiculous. I am a commodity manager at a major OEM, and therefore I'm very busy all of the time. And the reason why I don't have the new meter, and I'm not really mad about that based upon what's going on with everybody and their problems right now, is because they thought it was ridiculous that I would have to schedule out that far in advance. And they were rather rude about that. Am I opposed to changing the meter? No, I am not. I would happily do that because I think it's for the good of the city, and I think the city is doing the right thing. Yeah, I get there are glitches, but I cannot be given a 6-week time frame outside of COVID. Like right now, they could come in anytime they want, really. So I think there needs to be a dialogue with the company that's doing this, that they cannot constrain the time frame, particularly when you're talking about you must be home, you have to have the area clear, and you have to be available, and you have to have all of your animals constrained. So that's a lot of asks for a 6-week time period when it comes to somebody that has an excessively busy schedule. Again, I would like to say thank you for everything that you do, and I appreciate every one of you, and I am so glad that you are representing me.
Thank you, Kate, for your comments. The city manager, I think any comments tonight that involve the vendor will be followed up with the vendor and discussed with.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
The question I just heard relates to the installation schedule from the contractor and whether there's flexibility for individual cases.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you guys very much. And you have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you for letting us see your homes.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. All right.
Okay, next up is Lynn Clark.
Good evening, Lynn. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Lynn. Oh, you're on mute, Lynn. Looks like you're on mute. There we go.
Here you go.
So we were being estimated for however many years, and now all of a sudden our bill went up $130 over a period where we were home a lot because it was during the shutdown. So how are you articulating or figuring out the amount of water consumption based on an estimate that we have to trust you guys that you're being honest and accurate when previous bills we had far less water usage, and now all of a sudden, based on, we got our new meter in, I think, January or February, and then we went into lockdown and we're here. So I don't trust this company. I don't trust the amount that you guys are saying that we owe you. I don't trust anything. I'm sorry. It's just, for our bill to go up $130 when this is the first summer we haven't had a pool because our pool crapped out last year. Sorry to use like profane language, but
Good.
so like we have far less usage right now and our bill is $130 more. And I just feel like it's, and I voiced this on the Dale's website on Ferndale, and Melanie, you commented, and thank you for that, but I'm angry and I don't trust this new company, and I don't trust your averages, your speculations, your whatever the hell you guys are doing to figure out how much water we're using, that this is accurate. Like, where did you come up with $130 of extra usage? Like, this is the closeout of your bill, and we were estimating before, like, so if you were estimating before, were we overpaying or underpaying for the last 10, 20 years that I've lived in Ferndale? Like, this is so untransparent and so like uninformative and not fair to the residents. And I think that's what you've seen on all of the different Facebook posts, that people are like up in arms. I saw somebody that posted, and I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was $1,200 or $1,400 or $1,700 increase, and it's one human being in their house. Like, it's just beyond comprehension, and I don't trust it. I don't trust Ferndale anymore. So please explain how you can go from estimating our bill for however many years to now it's accurate, and I'm sorry, you owe us an extra $130 when you've actually decreased your water usage.
Through the chair, there's a couple of things I heard there. I heard one question about the efficacy of the water meter and trust in the water meter and trust that the meter actually works as designed and intended.
No, it's not questioning the new meter. I'm questioning the past meter, and that you're estimating that I didn't pay enough previously, so now I owe you $130. Where do you come up with that if that meter wasn't accurate?
Understood. So I believe I will direct that question to the finance department. And a clarification, it wasn't necessarily the meter, it was the radio that wasn't communicating the meter read. And so the meter read was actually wrong, and the meter read was estimating off of prior usage. But as it pertains to how we translate usage and how the new system will work and translate that, I'll leave that to our finance director, Shirley and Candice.
I'd be happy to field that one. So when we do the meter replacement, we take an actual picture of the meter itself, of the dial. So the estimates were estimates, you know, based on your 12 months of previous usage. So if you had some low reads in there, that would, you know, cause us to estimate a little bit lower. When we got your meter changed, we got a picture from the actual meter itself, and that is where we got the actual read from our meter. So we are transitioning from an estimated read to an actual read based on that picture that we got from your meter. And there should have been a piece of paper that you signed when you got your when you changed your meter that also had that reading on it as well. And so we use those two in conjunction with each other to figure out what your accurate read is.
So how can you tell us that the estimated read for the last, I mean, I've lived in Ferndale since, how long have we been here, baby? 2006. Like, perhaps you owe us money because you overestimated our water bill. How, like, I just don't understand that you can go from, it was an estimation and now it's accurate. Like, I just don't, it sounds like a bunch of crap. I'm sorry.
Candice, can I ask a clarifying question? So the meter read inside the house, is that accurate without being transmitted? It's the relay over the internet where the transmission is broken. So
Right.
any homeowner can go into their basement and check their water meter and see the accurate accounting. It's just not translating into the financial billing because the transmission over the inner tubes is not working.
Right, exactly. So the meter itself it's just a series of gears. And the reason why we're replacing them is only because they're at their end of their life cycle. And we didn't want to impact anybody else going forward. So
right,
those are the problem.
Right.
It wasn't
okay. And I think it's unrealistic for the city to expect residents to read their meters and translate that into a bill, which is why we provide this service. So I just want to, I mean, people are not reading
put
their
out there
bill.
for every, yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. I just want to put out there, Lynn, if you want us to look at your individual account, I would be happy to do that for you.
Thank you.
That we can flow test these the old meter. We have, any data that we have we can provide it for you. So if it's a matter of, trying to be as transparent as possible, we're happy to do that. I don't want anyone to feel like they're not, I don't want anybody to feel the way that you're feeling right now.
Just talking as a citizen and somebody that is, I travel for work and I meet with large groups of people. So right now I'm sitting at home taking care of my 18-and-a-half-year-old cat. And I have nothing else to do but go online and see everybody's comments and how angry they are over this situation. And it's created a huge mistrust of the Ferndale government. And I think I'm voicing, it was on the Dale's website on Facebook. It was on, and I'm not on the Fabulous Ferndale Forum, and I am on the Ferndale Forum, but regardless, people are not trusting Ferndale right now with regard to the water meter. And I know you're telling me now that the estimations were not estimations. It's just very confusing that you can tell us that we were trying to figure out what you were spending, but it was accurate. So I think you need a lot more information out to the people that you're representing, because it feels very colluded. It feels very dishonest. And I'm just speaking from like what everybody's saying online. You guys have a huge problem right now and you need to fix it.
Thank you, Lynn, for your comments, and I appreciate your brutal honesty, and I hear you. And we are definitely trying to fix these issues. And I encourage you to work with Candice. She can look at your total history here and be part of your solving your case. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll feel more confident about the city moving to our new water meters. It is a better, more stable product than what we've had. So, but I hear you and I understand your frustration and anger.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Lynn.
I
Okay,
answer a
next
real
up.
quick question?
And wait, Candace, can we get Lynn's information so you can contact her? Or you can email. What's the best way for Lynn to get you her contact information?
Lynn, if you could email waterbilling@ferndalemI.gov, and anybody here who is looking for some individual account analysis.
Excuse me, what was that?
Water billing, all one word, @ferndalemI.gov.
I don't want you to give your personal information over Zoom in this meeting tonight, so I'm hoping that Candace gets the right contact information for you. So if you could provide that to her.
And what is
through-
Candace's contact information?
Do you want
Just
my
use
telephone?
I'm
Do you have my
sorry?
phone number? Do you want my direct dial?
Your email is fine.
Okay, it's CGILES.
I'm sorry, what?
CGILES @ferndalemI.gov.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Lynn, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. All right.
Next up, Mayor, it looks like we have Alan Hale.
Good evening, Alan. Thank you for joining.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I just had one quick comment about, it's not related to billing, but more around the UMS process. I think during coronavirus, everyone is really hesitant to invite people into their homes. And it's a big risk to feel comfortable enough to get the meter replaced. I just wanted to share that I was kind of disappointed with UMS, where I opened the door and there was a man without a mask, kind of ready to get to work. And there was that, and I had a mask on, and then and then put that on.
Oops. Can you hear Alan, or is it just me? I've been having some unstable connections tonight from home.
No, it looks like there's a disruption in Alan's connection.
Through the chair, while we wait for Alan to come back on possibly, I think the
Okay.
spirit of what I heard Alan say is some of our contractors are not operating in accordance to city policy as it relates to COVID-19. So the city adopted a policy for all contractors to abide by relative to public health guidelines who are performing work on behalf of the city. So I know Dan Antosik is listening, and we will be reminding all UMS contractors that that is a requirement in order to execute on behalf of the city.
Okay, thank you. My internet dropped there for a sec. I think I'm back now. But thank you. I think I would like to see measures that UMS is providing PPE to their employees, because I think a policy saying wear PPE is one thing, but if they don't have it, then we get people fumbling for bandanas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Real PPE, not homemade PPE. Thanks,
Next
Alan.
up, we have Terry Johnson.
Hi, Terry. Welcome this evening. Can we unmute Terry, please?
Terry, you should be.
Oh, there you go. Welcome, Terry.
All right, thank you. It's actually Mike. It's my son's tablet.
Okay, well, that's good.
Thank you. We received our new meter pre-COVID and quite a bit of time pre-COVID. Due to our back bill was 15 months. We were estimated prior to getting an actual. Our bill was $1,800, 16, sorry. And we didn't receive, we didn't receive nothing until we got our bill. So what I'm hearing is 3 months, 5 months, 6 months is malarkey. And I agree with the one lady that called in earlier. The trust is gone. Just for instance, our new bill was $800. All right. We received no notification from the water department. Nothing saying that there was critical consumption. So whoever said that they're sending out notices, well, that ain't happening. Nobody's mentioning the cost of our water and our sewage, and sewage is huge. The sewage is more than what we're being charged for the water. Now, for instance, $490 something of my new bill is for the sewage. I filled a 5,000 gallon, 6,000 gallon pool this summer. Didn't receive no notification of high consumption. I have a pond. I water my garden. I water my lawn. None of that water is going in the sewage. But yet $500 of my new water bill, $500 of my new water bill is for sewage. And ain't nobody talking about that. I know we got separate sewage, separate water, or excuse me, it's all one. And that's why our bill is so high. But that's totally ridiculous. We use $800 was our bill. 500 of it was for sewage. Ain't nobody mentioning that. And that is outrageous. That pool water doesn't go down the sewage drain. My pond water evaporates. The birds fly. You can watch the water fly off the birds. All right. When I refill that doesn't go into the sewage. And water my garden, water my lawn. None of that. It shows up on my water bill. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But you're charging me for the sewage, and that's out of control. The cost of what we're paying. You know, why should we have to worry about if our son showers? Okay, one shower, a 2-hour shower. You know, I'm sorry, that's not going to cost that much. It's not. It's the cost of what we're paying is outrageous. And how the meters, like I said, we had our new meter put in way before COVID. And it all became because of the $1,600 bill we got. And we went into the city, sat down and talked to 2 people, and I think one of them was the lady speaking tonight. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. But I understand the anger, but the cost, what Ferndale is paying, the state of Michigan, however they want to say, is out of control. You got anything, babe? Okay, but that's me, and thank you for listening. But sewage is a lot of what we're seeing on our bills. Pay attention to your sewage costs, people, because it's more than your water bill. Thank you.
Mike. Thanks, Mike. So that is one of the first issues I've heard with high sewage rates on the bill as part of the whole complex problems that we're hearing from our residents. Is there someone to talk about that part of the bill?
Yeah, through the chair, our finance director will talk about how the water and sewer split you see on your bill reflects supporting the system's costs. So the infrastructure for the community's sewage is more expensive than water. And so Cheryl, can you speak to that?
Sure. So we have a combined system for water and sewer. So the portion of the sewer bill is 62%, and the portion that's water is 38%. And then we use the water usage to calculate the sewage cost. Because it's a closed system, we don't meter sewage. We don't have two separate systems that we can track how much sewage is going through the system. So if you fill a pool or if you have a leak, you are you're accruing costs for the water and the sewage together. And when we do the calculation to figure out how much water and sewer is going to cost together, we put the cost in separately for sewage and the cost in separately for water, and then figure out what that rate is. And then that rate is broken out. 62% covers the sewage costs for the entire system, and 38% is what covers the water costs for the system.
Is that a standard sort of operating procedure for cities with a combined sewer and water system?
It is a standard operating for with a combined water and sewer. Some communities may just do a 50-50 split, but the way that we do the analysis of the cost that it costs us for water and how much it costs us for sewer, we're able to break it down more thoroughly and understand that 62% of those costs are for sewage related costs and 38 is for the water related costs.
Okay.
The community has a separate meter for water and a separate meter for sewage, that they can meter it separately. And those communities do it differently, but that's a completely different infrastructure than what we have in Ferndale.
Okay.
Can I ask a question through the chair? On that topic?
Oh, yes, go ahead. I'm like, who's the chair? It's like me.
You. I guess to that point, since we have a closed system and we don't have separate meters for sewer usage, how do we or can we account for the concern that Mike raised, that there is a certain amount of water that residents use that does not go into the sewer system? How do we, how is that taken into account, or can it be taken into account?
Councilwoman James, the way that we do the calculation for the costs for water and for sewer is we look at the cost of the water system as a whole. We look at the piece that it costs us for water. We look at how much it costs us to process sewer. We look at the overhead costs and we allocate them to the different areas. So I have a very large spreadsheet that I put together, and I have water costs. And to cover these water costs, I need to have, I'm going to use hypothetical numbers. I need to have $3.80 per unit to cover the water cost. And then I do the same calculation for sewer, and for the amount of units that the city uses for water, we divide that into the cost, and I need $6.20 to cover the sewage costs. So we look at the costs, break them out separately, and then when we add that together, it's like $10 is the total for the cost of water, and that covers the portion that goes to sewer and the portion that goes to the water. But what we do is we take all those costs and divide them by the amount of usage, water usage for the city as a whole. So that's our dividing piece that we figure out how much it costs per unit to cover those costs for that portion of the system. Does that make sense? I know it's accounting kind of stuff, sorry. I'm trying to make it 5th grade.
All right. So we've been at public comment on our presentation for the past 30 minutes. I'm not sure who else is in the queue.
Mayor, we have quite a few people. 5, it looks like Lynn has raised her hand again, and then we have one call-in person.
Okay. Well, why don't we continue? Lynn, I'm going to have everybody else in the queue who hasn't spoken yet, and we're going to take them. So you just said we had 5 left, Kyle, it looks like?
Yes, 5 hands, 1 call-in.
Okay, so
Next
we're gonna take the 5 hands and 1 call-in, and we're gonna stop it at there. If there's anybody who else chimes in after I call that, feel free to do the call to audience, and call to audience is strictly set to 30 minutes. So we're gonna close this out with the folks who've already raised their hands. So go ahead, Kyle.
Yep, so next is somebody identified as owner.
Welcome, owner.
Sorry, I remuted you. Try again.
Can you hear me?
Hi. Who am I speaking to this tonight?
Evelyn Elster, West Drayton.
Good morning. Good morning. Good evening, Evelyn. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. First off, as far as life cycle of these units, been here 34 years. The life cycle of the first meter was 20 years. Now all of a sudden they're only 10 years. I take issue with that. In the spirit of transparency, for those people getting installations mid-billing cycle, can we split the bill for the final read on the old meter and what that cost, as opposed to the new billing cycle with the new meter? And as far as the online system, this has been kind of a cluster from the get-go. How is it that it takes 10 months to set up the online system after you start doing the installations? Is that not kind of backwards? Now, for the $3,216,000 that we're paying for this thing, first of all, we were told that you're going to spread the cost out over 5 years so it doesn't hurt so much. And then all of a sudden, oh, the city's paying for it. Which is it? And this has been a cluster from the beginning. You bought into this sales pitch from this company who only had one community who had had the system for a year, and they just got rave reviews. They got rave reviews in a year. Well, COVID aside, we haven't even started our first year. Are we going to give rave reviews also to the next batch of suckers that come along? I mean, come on, people. This is another mess in a long line of messes. And can we please just stop buying into every sales pitch that comes along and stop sticking it to the homeowners, please. This is absurd. All right, I'm done.
Thank you, Evelyn. I just want to verify that our new meters are not faulty. They are performing as expected, as purchased from the vendor. So Evelyn did bring up an interesting idea, though, about the installations mid-billing cycle and ending under the old meters and completing that bill and then transferring to the new meters with the new bill. I think that's what I heard. Can you have a comment on that?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll direct that to Candice, and I'll rephrase that as well. I think the comment and suggestion I heard was to end a billing cycle with the old meter when it's swapped, and then start a new billing cycle, which would be printing and mailing two billings per cycle. And so Candice, can you talk about that logistically and from a fee perspective?
Sorry, I remuted myself. So I would say from a logistics standpoint, we do on the bill currently show the usage for the old meter and then the usage for the new meter. if we were to split the two and end mid-month, I think that we would end up with a lot higher of printing costs for those individuals, which, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with doing that, but I think that the people that, you know, that would affect, they probably wouldn't want us to continue to have those higher printing costs for that kind of thing. We do show your old meter ID, your reading for your old meter, and then we show the new meter ID and the usage for the new meter. So it is broken out on those bills. I'm happy to explain it to anybody that has a question about it or how it works. That would be something, I guess, that the council would have to decide if we were gonna increase the costs for those individual ones.
So the current switchover bill has old meter readings, or the meter that is being closed out, and the new meter from the time it started at the switch.
Yes, as long as you're not in that group of 400. The group of the 400 ended up with exactly what Ms. Elster had suggested, actually, because they didn't have that data in the system. So they got a bill very similar where they just had the old meter costs and their new meter will be the next bill.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right, Kyle.
Next up, we have Kim Bennett.
Hi, Kim. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. Thank you so much for taking my comments this evening. I've lived in Ferndale for 15 years, and I'm going to diverge for a minute from the water meter issue. And I'm going to talk to you tonight about speed humps in the city of Ferndale.
Oh, wait, Kim?
Yes. Yes.
We're still on the water meters. Can I ask you to, we're trying to close out the questions and comments with the water meters. We're not to call the audience yet. Can I ask you to hold off just a little bit longer? We're almost to call the audience and you can be the first one when we start.
Okay, sure.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
But we'll talk bumps and humps and traffic calming.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Kim.
Sure.
All right.
All right, let's try Christian Rice.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christian.
A good thing you just clarified that we're only on the water meters, but my non-water meter comment is a quick one. So anyways, the water meter thing I have was the last time that my meter was replaced, they found out that the shut-off valve, it's seized up, and it's still seized up, and so my question or comment or whatever is, I would like to have something that I can switch the water off if I need to. So is there a way for me to like pay you guys extra to, when you put in the new meter, to add like a shut off valve before it or whatever? Because last time they did that, they couldn't find the shut off valve in the street either. So it took 3 appointments for them to replace the meter the last time. So, yeah, I'm just wondering what the options are as far as adding a correct working shutoff valve before the meter, if that's possible. I'll let you guys answer that.
I'm going to direct you to Dan, our DPW, and they can deal directly with your case and issue directly, and they can work out the solutions with you.
Okay.
They had trouble finding ours too when they changed over our meter, but it was eventually found.
Okay.
Joe, is that?
I'm sorry, through the chair, I just want to provide a preface here that the city is only obligated or able to perform any work on city-related property. And so if it's on the private plumbing system, that would be problematic for city resources.
Okay.
Can we just,
so is the because the shutoff valve is before the meter, so is that considered my property or the DPW property?
Joe, if I can clarify, he is talking about right before the meter, which feeds from the city water supply. So the pipe comes into the house, you have a small valve that you can turn on and off, and then you hit the meter.
Correct.
And then the water goes into the rest of the house. he doesn't have a valve right before the meter. Most people do. I'm actually surprised that they didn't install one the last time.
I have a valve, it's just seized up.
Oh.
This is Dan with the Department of Public Works. So the valves on either side of your meter, you should have one that comes from the city side and one on the private side. Those valves are technically responsibility of the private homeowner to keep in good operating shape. Now, if your curb stop at the street isn't operating properly, which we've come across quite a few of those as we're dealing with stuff that's 80 or 100 years old. So we've been trying to keep up with the replacement of those as we can. We've had quite a few of those pop up during the water meter replacement program. Those are the city's responsibility to get replaced. But if it's one of your valves either on the left or the right side of the meter that is seized up, that is technically the property owner's responsibility to have replaced. And that's why when we went to go replace the meter, that we didn't also replace one of those valves at that time.
Okay, so I guess, so my option is to call DPW, tell them to shut off the valve from the street, have a plumber replace the valves before scheduling my meter replacement.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. All right, and then the only other thing I had was, are we going to continue Zoom meetings or online called on, like online meetings, so that, you know, even after COVID, people can participate without having to leave their house?
It really is up to the Opens Meetings Act and what the legislators would allow. This is emergency orders permitted. And once the emergency orders are removed, the Opens Meetings Act via online access is also ended. And then I believe it goes to the legislators to actually adjust the Open Meetings Act permanently to allow online. So we are subject to state law.
Oh, boo.
Please contact your state rep and senator to let them know that you would like to access city council meetings via online access permanently.
All right, thanks all.
Yep, thank you. All right, I think we have two more, Kyle, and then we're going to close out the water meter comments.
Next up is Sherry. Sherry Gilchrist Reagan is what it says.
Good evening, Sherry.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks for joining us.
I actually have a couple questions. So I wanted to go back to the underbilling for starters. As it was said, a lot of us were underbilled, we were told, for 15 months. And we ended up with a $1,600 bill once the new meter was put in. This was back in 2019. So my first question is, when we went to the city and we spoke with Candice, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say Jordan was the gentleman's name. They had expressed that when we asked why it took 15 months for them to notice that something was going on, why it had taken that long, they had expressed they didn't want to point fingers. And my issue with that is the residents are being penalized for that. I get that the water was used, but we are also being hit with $500, $1,600 bills that were very unexpected because somebody failed to either do something or report something, and they should be held accountable for that. I don't understand why there was no repercussions, because there are for the residents here. So that's my first question. Secondly, I would like somebody to verify, probably the finance department, because it was Candice that expressed this to me, was as far as charging for sewage. The fact that you guys cannot meter for it, you, as it's been said, base our sewer on, I think it was said in this meeting, 62%, and it's 38% for the water usage. Now, Candice was saying that the city pays Great Lakes and Oakland County up front, and that the city is also charged an additional 60% as well. So they in turn have to turn around and bill the residents an additional 60% to recoup that cost, if you will. So I would like verification on that. And for those that don't understand how that charge was, how it originated, maybe that would give them some more understanding. Also, after the 60% that each resident in Ferndale is charged to determine what their sewage charge would be, being that's a flat percentage rate, I would like to know if the city profits at all from that. Let's say you charge 60% per resident, but in all actuality, it should have only been 30% or 40%. Are you guys profiting from what we pay in sewage? If so, what are you doing with those monies? And I think I'll end it with a question that was asked regarding somebody's comment. I think it was the finance department that had stated, basically, if you notice excessive usage, you guys try to notify the residents, whether it's leaving something on the door or you put a notice in the mail. Or, and that was a pretty good question. My water bill is $800 with the new meter. And we do have a pool. We do have a pond. I do have milkweed that I water. And it went up quite a bit. So the question was never answered when it was asked. And I would like to know, where is the notification stating that someone that's monitoring this at the city noticed that there was excessive use in this billing cycle and notified the residents of that. So I think that will do me pretty much.
All right, thank you, Sherry. I have 4 different questions, somewhat comments. Joe, do you want to tackle some of these?
Yeah, if you could read them off one by one, and then I'll direct.
I think 1 and 4, I'm going to sort of consolidate. I think they're in the same theme, and Sherry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard is that that because their bills were so high and that we have a customer service performance history of calling residents or notifying them when their bill is too high, but this doesn't seem to have happened in the last 6 months, if not longer, as part of the changeover. So did we stop that service because of the pandemic, or halted it or limited it in some way?
Well, I'll direct that question to the Finance Director, Cheryl. The question, I think, speaks to dedicated customer service that was provided at the beginning of the project. So the Jordan that was mentioned was a reference to Jordan Smelly, I'm assuming, who is now our election specialist. So Jordan was appointed as a temporary person to oversee customer service for the project, and where that stands today. So Cheryl, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. About 6 months ago, like I said, when we were at the point early on when things started failing, and when we were even doing 75 notifications a billing cycle, we were trying to keep up, and we kind of rearranged our billing cycle a little bit so we had some more time to research some of that stuff. But we were at 6 months ago, we were having 1,200 fail a cycle, and we could not reach out to everyone. And so some places may have, some citizens may have been missed because we just tried to get the top ones that were really high. And I acknowledge that a 16 bill is very high, but the other possibility, and I can only say it's a possibility because I'm not familiar, Sherry, with your account or your address, but if we saw that you had higher usage in the summer on previous ones from filling your pool, then it may have been something that we recognized by looking at the account that it was probably a pool that you filled. So
Not
that,
800.
So
I'm sorry?
No, not $800 worth. No, I mean, even the years prior, sure, we had a pool, but we don't have a pool like we have a pool now. It is a very excessive jump.
So it sounds like Sherry's had her case reviewed by staff, and the comments are, I think what some dissonance is that the staff has typically provided the red flag warnings of usage. This did not happen on a consistent basis because of the high amount of failed meters and the number of residents households experiencing higher bills because we did not have staff capacity, and then the pandemic hit. So there was a double whammy on the city side, and we were unable to perform those performance expectations for staff, or I'm sorry, for our residents. Moving on to the third question, or the second question was, does the city profit in our sewage rates? And I can definitively say no, but I'm gonna have the Cheryl explain.
Sure. We don't profit. The City by Nature is a nonprofit organization. The services that we provide to the city are paid for by taxes, service fees, or money coming in from the state and state shared revenue or gas tax and things like that. So the water fund there are very specific laws that revolve around the fund. We have to have a fund that keeps all of our costs and expenses and revenues for the water in one fund. And what's in that fund is designed to support the water system as a whole. And that would include staffing, any kind of vehicles, any infrastructure, the cost of water, the cost of sewage, any debt for drinking water revolving fund, things like that. So it's all looked at and determined. All of those funds stay in that, all the dollars stay in that fund. Whatever we charge and we bring in as revenue for water stays in the water fund and can only be used to support that system.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Sherry, for your questions. And I think, Kyle, we have one more comment on the list.
Yes, let me see. Next up is Natalie. Thank you for waiting, Natalie.
Oh, you're welcome. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, welcome, Natalie.
Awesome.
Good evening.
Thank you. So you guys have probably read some of the posts on the forums. I was kind of a big proponent of that. I never meant for it to be necessarily a negative thing. However, hearing that my 88-year-old neighbors received a $932 bill, I thought of my own grandparents, and that to me it's very disheartening. I appreciate that the mayor has taken the time to apologize. I find it a little interesting that no one from the water department has really even apologized, because this is an issue. I mean, whether or not the residents used the water isn't the issue. It's the lack of transparency from the get-go. Why weren't we told that these bills were being estimated? Another issue, the older residents that are in this community, are they going to be able to access this information online? Why was nobody told a long time ago before it got to this point? I don't think that the estimations were ever a great idea. I get that that may have been the only way to do it, but why wasn't that communicated to the residents? I believe that's really everybody's main question. I'm getting all types of messages from people now. I never expected this to blow up quite as big as it did. I just couldn't, like I said in my post, I couldn't sleep at night knowing that there's elderly people getting hit with these huge bills. I have no idea what's really going on. I mean, they're, you know, so much older, and I can't, it really is upsetting to me. And especially from a community that's been so progressive and so empathetic and so seemingly transparent with so many different things, and just such a welcoming community. This is like the last thing that myself and I'm sure a lot of other residents would have ever expected. So, I mean, I really want to know why this wasn't communicated a long time ago. And I also want to know what this looks like as far as, you know, I moved into this house as a renter in 2018. I've had issues with the water department since day one. I said that my water bill was too high. The former tenant of this house is a friend of mine, lived here with her husband, and they were foster parents, continuously fostering children. And the bill was less than it is now when they lived here. So I've had conversations with the water department about that. So I already didn't really, there was a little bit of me not trusting them, but I paid the bill. I paid it on time. It is what it is. Now this has opened up a whole new can of worms. You know, I'm an only child. I have to take care of my parents. They don't live in this house, but I'm afraid to have somebody walking through my door that I don't know, and I don't know where they've been. The fact that this was a mandated thing, I understand that. I understand we need to move forward, but having something like this mandated during a pandemic, I mean, that also was really interesting to me. I did call and I tried to reschedule, and they said they'd call me in 2 to 3 months to reschedule. I said, well, what if I can't do it then? What if this pandemic is still, you know, just as it is now or worse? And they said, well, we'll have to, you know, reassess the situation then. Well, am I going to be forced to have somebody in my home? What does that mean? You know, there's a lot of questions that I don't think were ever answered. And I think that there's been a lack of transparency from the jump, like I said, and I just want to know why. And I also want to know what that looks like as far as, you know, the estimations. My estimations were based on, you know, somebody else living in this house. Am I paying for somebody else's bills? What about people that just bought the house? Are they paying somebody else's rates? Like, how far back are we going? You know, all those different things. I apologize if this was a little bit all over the place. I've been up since 4:30 for work. So, but I do appreciate you guys taking the time out to have a segment on this. I love the city. I love my neighbors, and I'm really just trying to help as much as I can, especially to the elderly people that maybe won't get this information as quickly as myself or somebody in a younger generation.
Thank you, Natalie, for your comments. And I will let Joe answer some questions here. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, Natalie, first, thank you for your comments. I appreciate the stewardship of your neighborhood and your block. So we'll answer question number one. I just want to deal with the question of the senior resident who has a higher bill. So if you can and are able to communicate that property address to our finance department, which is cgiles@ferndalemi.gov, that would help us look into that further. But we need an address in order to look into that. But part of that is also talking about the hardship plan that the finance department did set up for folks who need some extra time. And so Candice, can you speak a little bit about what's available around hardship plans?
Absolutely. So I have a phone number that anyone can call and set up a payment plan with. I'll give it to you guys again. It's 248-546-2374. The payment plan is available online for those who choose to use it. You can reach me, you know, at City Hall from 10 o'clock till 3 right now. As we're going through these hours, I'm available to anyone who's looking to get on a payment plan. We have been having payment plans since I started. It hasn't just been because of the meter change, but because of, you know, all of the adjustment bills and everything like that, it's become more used. But we've always allowed for payment plans, and they are really determined on an individual basis. So if you cannot pay, you know, anything more than $20 a month or $10 a month, we will work with you for as long as you need us to. You know, a lot of people, they want to get their estimation, you know, I want this to take me 6 months. Okay, we'll work with you. Whatever you need us to do at this point. I feel terrible for your neighbor, personally, and I don't want people to feel like this is, you know, such a terrible hardship for them. You know, at this point, all I can offer for anyone is just to give me a call or to come see me or to, you know, use the online, and I'll work with you. I'll do whatever I can.
Right. All right, that concludes the comments for the water meter conversation tonight, which is a presentation, and we allowed a different set of comments because of it's such a big issue with the community. And I just wanted to say again, I do apologize to our residents who are experiencing disruption, heartache, stress, and anxiety about these bills at a time where you don't need higher bills. This is a complicated project without a pandemic of transferring from old meters to new. And without the pandemic, the shift, I think, is a challenge in and itself. The pandemic on top of it is a colossal problem. And so I just want to say again, I thank you for working with us and listening to our staff who are very committed and dedicated and want to solve these problems as soon as possible, so that these issues can be resolved in your household. And for those who have talked about trust with your government, something that I take very seriously. It's one of the reasons I ran for office and believe in good governance and good policy. And I understand and hear you that the water meter problem has eroded that a little bit for you. And I hope that our approach to solving this problem in a fair manner and our communications efforts going forward help build back that trust. I'm committed to doing that, given that the situation presented itself. I wish it hadn't. But when we do have challenges inside the city in terms of operations, we're always committed to addressing them, finding solutions, putting it forward, and working with our residents. So with that, look forward for the FAQs and more information. And we're definitely taking all of your recommendations and comments that we heard tonight to improve communications going forward. So thank you, everybody. And we are now moving on to call to audience of the agenda. And same as our approach to the comments in our presentation, we'll be taking comments by Zoom and by phone. And we're gonna please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And first up is Kim Bennett, who wants to talk about speed humps. So if Kyle, you can unmute Kim for us.
Hello.
Thanks,
Mayor.
Kim, for your patience.
Absolutely. Thank you for hearing me this evening. Mayor and Council, my name is Kim Bennett, and I've lived in Ferndale for 15 years with my husband on Jewel Street. And I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you this evening about a speed hump that was supposed to be put in my neighborhood. I want to thank you in advance for pulling the project. I understand not only was the project pulled on my street, but on, it looks like about 6 or 7 streets also in my neighborhood. But the reason why I wanted to speak tonight is because
I wanted to talk about two issues. The first one was the process about how this all happened. I did get a letter, and I'm looking at it right now, from June 24th that did alert my husband and I to a notice of construction on our street. And I did read it, and I told my husband about it, but you know, I know that the process was that someone on my street started a petition and collected more than half of the people who live there, their signatures. But my signature was not on it. And also, when I found out that the speed bump was going to be right in front of our home, along with a huge sign on our property, all of a sudden that got my attention. And I found that out about 2 days before it was supposed to be constructed. And I was very concerned about the process. It seems to me like the city of Ferndale should have alerted me, along with the person who lives across the street, that this was going right in front of our homes, but that never happened. And I know when the project was pulled, there was talk about, you know, tweaking the process. And if you do continue to put speed bumps in, which I hope you won't anymore, and I'm going to get to that point next, I would advise that you would at least alert the homeowner. That's all in the name of transparency. I've sat here and listened to all these residents talk about the water meters, and transparency came up many, many times. And I just think that that's an important part of the process of alerting a homeowner. But going on to my next point about speed bumps, I would like to formally ask the council to please consider not putting these speed bumps in our neighborhoods anymore. I did see that the speed bumps that were proposed to be put were all in a certain part of the city where I live, and that's the southeast part of the city. This is, I know, not the most it's more in the industrial part of the city. And our neighborhood is really coming back. I can tell you, right across the street, there was a home that sold for $225,000 just a few weeks ago. And next door, a home next to that house sold for almost $300,000. And I'm like 5 blocks from 8 Mile. And this is really exciting to us that our neighborhood is like, wow, so in demand. So I was talking with some of the folks in the planning department, and I was suggesting
If you're
to them.
at 3 minutes, can you?
Oh, I'm already at 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes,
okay.
yeah. If you can wrap up.
Sure. I guess I just wanted to say that I wish that City Council would consider not putting these in our neighborhoods anymore. I did send you an article that outlined that there are a number of cities that do not do them. I would bet my life that swanky communities like Birmingham and Bloomfield Hills do not have these, and I'm going to make calls and find out for sure. But I just think that we have a beautiful community. I love living here. I'd really like it if you would consider not putting these in our neighborhoods anymore. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Next, Mayor, we have Dustin Hagfors.
Hi, Justin. Welcome.
Dustin.
Dustin, sorry. Of
Hey,
course.
good evening, everyone. I know most of you probably already know me. This is Dustin Hagfors. I live at 190 Wordsworth. I am a transportation planner by trade, and I actually was one of the individuals to do the petition process on my street. And the reason why I did so was because it actually shows when you have speeding traffic and increased traffic from cut-throughs, it actually reduces your property values. So I went through the process the city instructed me to do so on. We did have a majority of the street say they want to have the speed humps in place. We got the approval letter, we did everything we needed to, and then we were kind of blindsided with the signs disappearing and saying now the project is going to be put on hiatus. I'm very disappointed in that. We followed the process. We did what we needed to do, and the residents did make their voices heard. It was another situation similar to Kim, where the people who had it in front of the home did not want it. I understand the concern about that, and I actually did offer the city, I'm happy to have that in front of my home. It will fit, and I'm happy to have the engineering department come out to have that discussion personally so we can get that put in place, because the speed humps would not only reduce the cut-through traffic from Woodward to Hilton, especially during rush hour, it would also slow people down, which makes the street a lot more safer and a lot more appealing to live on. We've actually had some individuals move who had children because they felt unsafe on our street. because of the amount of cars that cut through at a very high rate of speed. So I do want to ask the council, do you have any suggestions on what I'm supposed to do, aside from calling the police every time I see a car speeding, which will happen a lot, to get this traffic calming in place? I know I saw Withington just got repaved and they did some great road diets on there, and that's fantastic, but somehow when we get to the southeast portion of the city, none of our streets have these improvements to really lower the amount of traffic coming through. So I would like to know what's my next step in this process. What can we do here? And I would appreciate your response. Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin. I'm going to direct you to the city manager to follow up. It sounds like the process of engagement needs to be tweaked, but the city is committed to a traffic calming program, and this was started by the request of residents, and we asked a majority of residents to support it. There might be another treatment that would be better suited for your street other than a hump, such as the bump outs that were put in Withington. And maybe that could be something to be explored with the planning department as part of this petition process. I think there's a solution here of putting the traffic calming in. Just might not be in front of the Miss Bennett's house, and perhaps a different treatment. So can we have Joe, can we have Justin to follow up with Dustin?
Yeah, through the chair. Justin may or may not.
Yes, he's going on paternity leave.
Follow up with you. We're going to investigate both cases that we heard tonight. We'll review each case and then follow up.
Yeah, I'm home all week, so I'm happy to have the engineering department come and meet up with me, and we can talk about getting that put in front of my house, because I'm happy to have it there.
Thank you for making that offer of suggestion. We'll let the engineers and the planning staff work with you, Dustin, and the street. Okay.
Next up.
Next up.
Next up is Mike Flores.
Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Welcome. Buenas noches. Good evening, council. My name is Augusto Mike Flores on Whittington Street, and I am pro Ferndale. First, as a follow-up to last council meeting, I encourage that all council meetings be announced via Facebook events, similar to the successful voting events announced by the clerk's office. This would just be another tool to encourage people to be civically engaged. I look forward to positive outcomes to this simple request. Second, I want to thank City Council members Mikulski and Polika for their commitment to transparency on the dot. I would argue detailed financials and expenditures should be available real time as a rule for program managing a project, especially one of this scale. Complexity has been given as the excuse for not doing so, but the fundamentals of math are the same regardless of complexity. 1 + 1 will always equal 2, and 4 - 2 will always equal 2. But nonetheless, I look forward to the audited report and the reconciliation detailing the over expenditures in the $2 million loan from the general fund reserves to regain the trust from the community via transparency efforts, which seems to be a theme for this evening. Third, I want to thank and send a huge shout out to the city clerk's office, her team.
Sorry.
May I continue? Yeah.
Sorry, I had an interruption at home.
Oh, okay. one of the casualties, one of the things of doing Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start again with my third point.
Sorry about that, Mike.
It's okay. I want to thank and send a huge shout out to the city clerk's office, her team, and everyone who participated in the election process last week. I had the privilege of supporting Precinct 7 from 6 a.m. to 1:30 in the morning. Even though the day was long and exhausting, we were able to help approximately 200 residents to vote safely at Precinct 7. At our precinct, and I'm assuming across the city, everything was safely done and without major issues. This is only possible because of the leadership, the work, and dedication of the clerk's office. Point 5, traffic calming. On Whittington Street, I am the one that started the process 2 years ago. and most of us are happy with what has been implemented. However, it's been described as a temporary solution. I personally do not understand what the next steps are to make this a permanent solution. So if someone could please share what the process is to move these temporary traffic calming diet tools into a more permanent solution for our street. As always, thank you for your time, consideration, and any feedback that you provide this evening. Gracias, and thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Mayor, next up we have Evelyn.
Welcome back, Evelyn.
Well, thanks. I would also like to give a bravo to the city clerk's office and everyone who volunteered in the voting process. And they did a bang-up job. I would also like to address traffic calming. Because 9 Mile has been bottlenecked. I'm not going to call it a diet. I'm going to call it a bottleneck, which is exactly what it is. For bike lanes west of Pinecrest, trucks can no longer turn because they do not have the radius needed to turn onto westbound 9 Mile from northbound Pinecrest. Therefore, they are forced to use streets like West Drayton and other residential streets whose asphalt is not rated for trucks. I talked to the engineer when they laid our street, and our asphalt is not rated for trucks. We have a no truck sign at one end of the street, but not on the other, on the Oak Park end. Between that and the bus races, school bus races all day, every day, 5 days a week, they turn that corner and put the hammer down, and they're doing 40 by the time they pass my house with children. And I can honestly tell you that people do not ride their bikes to work. They drive beaters without mufflers. I understand we're at the far end and on the outskirts of the city, which means that the police don't patrol as much as they could on other areas. But as far as speed bumps, I don't know. The problem is that you bottleneck 9 Mile and all this traffic is spilling out onto the residential streets and putting up speed bumps and other deterrents is just the tail wagging the dog. Hard. And once again, here we go with absurdities. You talk about, you know, making everything nice. You're going to do the same thing on Woodward, which is going to increase traffic on Pinecrest and Livernois and Campbell. And is anybody having any forethought whatsoever as to the repercussions of your actions here? This is sad. I've been told that we can't have speed bumps on Drayton because it is a bus route. Whereas someone on West Marshall said that they did get speed bumps and they are a bus route also.
Evelyn, you're at 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is a cluster again.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Next, Mayor, we have Alan Hale.
Welcome back, Alan.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. This is Alan Hale. I live at 1903 Woodward Heights in the northeast corner of town. Like many this weekend, I was disappointed by the actions of St. Michael's Media, also known as the Church Militant Group, located at Hilton and Morehouse and Hilton and Browning Street, where they hosted an event of over 100 people in 2 large outdoor tents on 2 different blocks with no masks or distancing measures in place, violating several current executive orders and endangering dozens of neighboring homes and families to COVID-19 exposure. I was mostly disappointed with the response to attempting to report this threat to our city's public health, where the police non-emergency officer on duty claimed that nothing was enforceable on private property. And then the Oakland County Health Department only has active lines for reporting Monday through Fridays. So this left me pretty frustrated and confused on who's holding businesses and groups accountable for all of our public safety, as we're all in this together still, and we're all in the middle of a pandemic. I was disappointed with kind of the apathetic response from the police officer, and they seemed rather uninformed on what current executive's orders are and what their role is enforcing those is. So I would ask that the city or the police department send out and publish a summary of what our current executive orders are for clarity, and clarify those rules that we should be upholding and taking steps to make sure that those who are in violation of public safety kind of know the consequences of that before we invite another hotbed risk to our city. I also wanted to make a quick comment with good news. I want to take a moment to recognize Adam Loomis for taking the mantle of ADA coordinator. And this is in kind of a rapid joint effort with Joe and your office. And we learned this last week in our Accessibility and Inclusion Advisory Commission for Ferndale. And all of us in the commission are really looking forward to working with Adam and everyone else helping make our government more accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I've received lots of complaints about church militant as well. So Joe will need to continue to have conversations about mask enforcement and what the parameters are for cities in order to enforce that with the executive order. So, all right, Kyle, anybody else?
Yes, Mayor. Next up is Garo B.
Garo, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, welcome.
Hi, good evening, Council. I just wanted to talk real quick regarding the DOT. So we had that tour the other day. It was on Thursday, and it was really nice. I thank you for organizing that and getting everyone together. And it was pretty good, except a little bit of a strange experience. You know, you had a lot of people there, and a few people were upset, and that's to be expected. They didn't want the parking garage in general, and some had specific complaints, and some people got kind of highly emotional. But my main concern was, so, you know, a lot of us had questions about why this, why that, why was it built this way, and the city wanted to defer to the designers, architects, well, whatever they're called. I think they're separate from the developers. And they really, for the most part, you know, stuff that was important to us didn't really give answers. That, you know, there was like these quick quips or sarcastic apologies, or, you know, throwing hands up in the air. Oh, we can't fix every problem, can't control what other people do. In general, though, it seems like they were at a loss because they never had really any intention, or that like they were supposed to care about what actual residents cared about on these things regarding privacy or noise pollution or you know, sound from traffic, the headlights, safety, security, stuff like that. You know, they like specific questions like why didn't you use direct, you know, for me it was mainly privacy. So you know, I won't lie, that was my main concern because I got 4 kids. We asked questions like, instead of a see-through screen, why not use directional louvers like blinds so they only direct vision upwards? Or why not have higher the concrete walls, portions of it that were concrete, up to at least like privacy fence level? Why were there actual gaps between where they had screens? Why even on the roof did you still need to use a see-through screen? And there were no answers. It was like, oh, that's, you know, they said that's good to think about, and we'll get back to you on that. But I mean, that seemed like all very deceptive. Kind kind of felt like, you know, I was on the steering committee and everyone was there. I think the architects were there, designers were there. I feel like kind of we were co-opted. You know, we were invited to the party, allowed to speak, our voices were heard, but we really didn't have a say. We didn't have to be listened to or really take action for our requests, just ignored. So basically, so if it is the case that the city wants the designers to take into account what the residents are requesting, I'm just at the next meeting, I'd like to hear something where they're actually, they thought about it now and they are getting back to us about it. So that's what I'm hoping to hear at the next meeting. And that was it for the most part. I did have just another comment about the water issue. I really didn't know about it until now, but did I hear correctly that there was a picture of the meters before they took them out or something like that? Was that correct?
Yes, they took a capture of the actual meter read.
Okay. Because I don't know.
The final meter read before they replaced it.
Okay. Because on my, I just had mine done recently and I see the meter read is written down. And it's kind of a little high, like we're pretty consistent. We use about 18 usage, and I did see that they estimated the last 3. I could see that it could be up 1 or 2, but it looks like he might have transposed numbers. If that's a possibility, can we check?
I would call Candace Giles, send an email to Candace Giles, and her email is cgiles, C as in Candace, GILES @ferndalemi.gov, and she will look into your bill.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
With your questions. Thank you, Garo, for coming back and making comments tonight.
Thank you.
All right. Kyle?
Okay, Mayor, we have just one more. If you want to allow, Kim has raised her hand again, Kim Bennett, if we're doing a second round. I don't know if that's something that we do.
Kim, if it's something, a new topic, that would be helpful. Rather than going back to something else, but a new topic would be helpful.
It's not a new topic, but I'd like it if you did invite me to any conversations you have about the speed bumps, because I did hear you say, Mayor, that you're committed to a traffic calming program, and I was disappointed to hear that because I am opposed to it, and I know Dustin said he would want it in front of his home if you did put it on his street, but that's the problem on our street. People want it, but they don't want it in front of their homes, and you know,
that is understandable.
Yeah. So, and I would just like you all to think: would you want that in front of your home? And I'll probably come back to City Council, maybe even poll you and ask you, because I think that's the real issue. And you know, Justin said he was in the field of road work, but I'm a journalist and I have looked, and this is not, the jury's out, and there have been academic papers and white papers that do say these are antiquated ways of calming traffic, and they're controversial, and you know, I'd just like to be part of the discussion.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
And
So
Mayor,
go ahead.
I don't see any call-in participants, so I think that would be everybody that has shown an indication of wanting to participate.
Okay. As a closeout, as many comments tonight were about traffic calming. The city is updating our Ferndale Moves non-motorized transportation mobility plan this year, and there was going to be engagement about what we should do to improve our streets. So when that engagement process starts, I encourage you to participate and give your feedback, because our streets, we do put programs in place so that we are answering residents' concerns, and traffic calming. Speeding on our streets, on our side streets, is an issue we hear about a lot, and this was one of the solutions to that. But sounds like we need to make adjustments to the program. Okay, moving forward, that is the conclusion of the call to audience, and we are moving on to consent agenda, and I'm going to read the consent agenda. So 7A is approval of minutes of regular city council virtual meeting held July 27th, 2020, as submitted by city clerk. 7B, approval of the resolution joining the City of New York's amicus brief to the United States Supreme Court supporting the City of Philadelphia in the case Fulton versus City of Philadelphia, as submitted by the city manager. Approval of the 2020 Oakland County Local Road Improvement Matching Fund, cost participation agreement and grant award in the amount of $52,347 for 2020 road improvements to Allen Road, board project number 2020-09, and grant award to be allocated to local roads, account number 450-000-977.700, as submitted by planning manager. 7D, approval of the Ferndale Pleasant Ridge Fire Protection Agreement Resolution document as submitted by the fire chief. 7E, approval of the professional services agreement with Plant Moran LLC to provide temporary finance assistance services in an amount not to exceed $15,000 from account 101-212-818-010 contractual services accounting as submitted by the finance director. 7F, approval of the alley vacation between East Camborne and East Breckenridge as submitted by the city manager. 7G, approval to purchase the 35-gallon totes of green 3% firefighting foam from Apollo Fire Equipment Company in the amount of $5,500 as submitted by fire chief. 7H, approval to purchase a winch with installation from Commercial Group Lifting Products in the amount of $10,597.84 as submitted by the deputy director. And 7I, approval of the bills and payrolls as submitted by the city manager's office and subject to review by the council finance committee. All right, council, what is your consent agenda pleasure?
Mayor, before there's any motion, 7F is actually just to schedule the public hearing for the alley vacation. It's the proposed resolution is to schedule the public hearing for September 14th to consider whether or not to vacate that particular alley.
Okay, so it's an approval of a public hearing.
To schedule the public hearing for September 14th.
Okay, schedule. Okay, so 7F is approval of the schedule a public hearing for September
14th.
14th of the alley vacation between East Camborne and East Breckenridge as submitted by the city manager. Thank you for that amendment.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you for that amendment.
I move to support the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Excellent. And I just approved by Paul, or moved by Paulica and supported by, was that Bruner James?
Yes.
And before we move to go to vote, I just wanted to comment on one item and about 7B, the resolution joining the City of New York's amicus brief to the United States Supreme Court. And this is part of the Freedoms for All Americans. And it really is about amplifying the voice of the Supreme Court case. Sorry, I'm bringing it up, that limits, sorry, hang on, let me bring up my little primer. Sorry, I don't have it ready. It's to, sorry. It is a non-discrimination case that limits LGBTQ certifying same-sex couples who would endorse a couple's relationship as acceptable as opposed to their religious faith-based in adopting children. So Freedom for All Americans has asked cities in support of Freedom of All Americans to support this, and I'm proud that Ferndale would lend its voice. So thank you. All right, there's a motion and a second, and Madam Clerk, can we have an approval, please?
Councilmember Polika?
Yes.
Councilmember James,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Leaks May,
Yes.
Councilmember Mikulski,
Yes.
and Mayor Piano.
Yes. All right. Consent agenda approved. And moving on is the regular agenda. And there's no items for the regular agenda tonight. So we are moving on to call to council and starting first with the city manager, who will lead updates from the department directors.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For the new process, we ask for feedback from directors in the beginning, and if you give me one moment, I need to get to my roster list. And blended with previous meetings, I'm sorry, it's a long thread. Let me get to tonight's meeting. Okay. Tonight we have leading off, I'll actually lead off with our Assistant City Manager, Kyle Paulette, to give us a brief update about Martin Road Park.
Thanks, Joe. So just in brief, last Thursday, we hosted a open discussion to talk about the design concept of the splash pad that's going to be installed in Martin Road Park. And this was a community-based discussion hosted by myself and Parks Director Lorena Wheeler. We had Councilmember Polika join us to give us an update on sort of the history behind this splash pad and how we got to this moment. And then we walked through 3 varying designs with residents to hear their feedback. And we actually had, I think, a really lively discussion and took away quite a few notes regarding just sort of general preferences, likes, dislikes. The only other thing I wanted to mention in regards to this right now is that we are doing a survey of the city residents as far as, well, same sort of thing, what you like, what you don't like. The link to the survey is right there, surveymonkey.com/r/splash pad or you can also visit our website's resources and parks planning development page, which has a link to the survey and also a link to the presentation. So if you have time, you can catch up and sort of see how the meeting went. We really want to get feedback from as many people as possible, because what we're planning to do is incorporate that feedback into the design that we're going to throw out for builders to sort of bid on. And then we're going to pick the design that best fits what residents want and is within the city's budget. And that is it as far as Martin Road Splash Pad. Please complete that survey and feel free to reach out with any thoughts.
Through the chair, Councilman Polika, I agree, Kyle. There was a lot of interaction and exchange of ideas. I was really pleased with the level of participation of those who attended the meeting. And just for clarity, if people are a little confused about what we're doing, we're actually doing something very different than a lot of other communities do. Usually, splash pads, you'll have a public meeting about the various things that you would like, and then you pick a company and kind of fit those ideas with whatever equipment and amenities that they offer, kind of like picking things off of a shelf and putting a splash pad together. And what I love about what we're doing is we're engaging the community about the various things that they want and capturing that information and then putting out to bid to companies saying, this is what we want. Now you tell us how you're going to provide what we want. And then based on that, we're going to select a company to produce the splash pad. So my understanding is there will be, once the approval of the company has been made with the Parks and Rec Commission, there'll be another public meeting so that people can see the proposed plan from the company that we pick, and then we can provide some additional ideas, thoughts, maybe tweak their idea a little bit, and then hopefully by June of next year we will have a wonderful brand new splash pad in Martin Road Park.
Thank you, Councilman Polika. Next up, we have DPW Deputy Dan Antosik giving us some general updates on infrastructure.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we're moving along pretty good with our water main improvement program this year. Last that we got kind of buttoned up is still finishing up the road and sidewalk over on Burdette from the new water main that we installed. The 2020 pavement improvement program is going along quite well. We will have the vast majority of all the road work completed by the end of the month. And then I know that there's been some questions as in regards to the lawn restoration and stuff like that goes on. So what we do is we tell the contractor, and it's language in our contract, that you have to have the lawn restoration done by this time in late spring. Otherwise, you have to wait till the fall. So we can make sure that we get good lawn established during the heat of the summer. So the majority of the lawn restoration gets put off until the fall because we found that is best in past years. So the residents and the streets that have been redone, you're like, why hasn't the city done anything with my lawn restoration and stuff like that? That is going to come in the month of September. So look out for that. It's not something that we're just, we've ripped up your right away and we're not going to replace it. There is some method behind the madness that goes on as far as our street resurfacing projects go. So that'll come in September. We are back and doing cured in place pipe. So we're doing sewer cleaning, sewer lining in certain segments of the city. That's going forward. That's been going well. And overall, it's kind of business as usual. And I will say, was a big theme of this council meeting tonight. There is still a water meter replacement program going on. We still have quite a few individuals, after reaching out to multiple attempts to schedule an appointment to replace the water meter, that have not scheduled that appointment. That is very important. We would like to get into your house if you do so feel comfortable with us entering in and replacing that water meter. Schedule that appointment. And even if you don't feel comfortable with us entering your home to replace your water meter, please let us know. We are making note of those individuals that, may be at high risk or just not comfortable whatsoever. We're making note of that. And we'll reschedule at a later date. But it is very important that, if you have the ability and you're comfortable with us having our contractor enter your home, replace your water meter, to get that water meter replaced. It is an expensive program that we have going on here in the city, and is also a very important one. So I would encourage everyone to, at least reach out to us and tell us like, hey, I'm down to schedule an appointment, or I'm not comfortable scheduling an appointment at this time, and we'll revisit that at a later date. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Dan. And next we have our Police Chief Palazzolo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Wanted to start by congratulating Officer Patrick Lemke. He was promoted to sergeant today. Typically, we would have a pinning ceremony. That we were unable to do that in an official capacity in front of City Council. That did happen. It shift changed this morning. Hopefully, in a few months, we will be able to do that so his family could be there. Pat is a 24-year veteran of the police department, member of the Honor Guard on the evidence tech team, and he's probably one of the top 5 officers that I receive calls, emails, letters saying, hey, I met Officer Patrick. He came to my house on a hospice death. He was great. Or he just stopped and played with my kids. Or so he's a great asset to the police department. Some of you, or probably most of you, don't know that his father, Ted Lemke, retired from the police department in the mid-90s. He was a traffic control officer. His badge number was number 11, and Patrick was issued badge 111. So congratulations to him. I'd like to take a little bit of time to acknowledge the great police work that the men and women of the patrol division and the investigative division conducted over the last 10 days. We had 4 crimes involving firearms. One was a road rage at 8 in Livernois. One was a drive-by shooting on Almont Street. One was a traffic stop where a AR-15 pistol with 60 rounds tucked in next to the driver's seat. And the other one was a carjacking at 8 in Livernois. Their swift action, attention to detail, and coordination with other departments ended up with an arrest in all 4 of these cases and issuance of warrants out of 3 of those 4 circumstances. So it's still a dangerous place out there, and our folks are going out there and doing their jobs. The last comment I have is on the caller about the St. Michael's Church Executive Order 153, which was signed on July 17th. Section 6 specifically notes no individual is subject to penalty under Section 8 of this order for removing a mask while engaging in religious worship at a house of religious worship. Consistent with guidance from the CDC, congregants are strongly encouraged to wear the face mask covering for these religious services. We've had other calls for other churches as well. We do document that we were out there and we have calls for service notes, but it is not illegal in that circumstance. That's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we have Emmanuel Johnson from our Parks and Recreation Department.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few quick updates on our construction efforts at our parks. I wanted to let you know that the construction at Gary Park as part of the alternate G5 timeline has been completed. That construction includes the installation of the retaining walls and the bioswale installation as well, and that stuff was done as part of the grant offerings that were given to us through the Tony Hawk Foundation. And then at Schiffer Park, the majority of the construction efforts are complete. There are still some things that need to be done, including electrical, irrigation, lighting, and some landscaping things, but we are still working on a timetable that currently sees us finishing up construction at Schiffer by the end of September. Our sports port program, it continues to go well with our sport distribution kits that we do on Mondays and Fridays. This Friday, we'll be giving away the remaining supplies of the previous things. So the soccer balls, the playground balls, the basketballs, all of those things. That'll be happening on Friday and Monday from 3:30 to 4:30. And those are available while supplies last. So if you happen to miss out on one of the previous offerings, you can come up and get those while they're still available. And we also want to let everybody know that the dog park membership classes are still going on. They're happening virtually. The next one that we have going on is on Thursday. And that is the way that you get access to be able to access our dog park. It's only available to Ferndale residents. So if you have any questions or would like to know more about that process, please email me at ejohnson@ferndalemI.gov.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That is the end of the comments, and just one other comment on behalf of the fire chief. He was called to service just before the meeting, so Chief Shea is not available for public comment today. Oops, Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you, Joe. All right, moving on to call to council. I'm going to start with Greg Pollica, Councilman Pollica.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to give a huge shout out to our police department. Chief Palazzolo, mentioned that this has been quite an active week between a drive-by shooting on Almont, carjacking at gunpoint on 8 Mile. Both events resulted in the arrest of validated suspects, and a speeding vehicle on Leroy that resulted in the arrest of an intoxicated driver operating a vehicle under a suspended license and concealing an AR-15. These are very scary scenarios for our officers to enter without knowing the outcome. So I want to acknowledge and thank our police officers for their bravery and dedication to our community, and to acknowledge my appreciation for their service in the age of COVID-19. While many of us were able to remain safe in our homes since March and had the choice to leave our homes, our officers and firefighters continue to show up and do their jobs, knowing that they're putting themselves and their families at risk of contracting COVID. And they are still putting themselves at risk every day they are on the job. So thank you to our police officers and firefighters for your dedication and commitment to service to the people of Ferndale. And that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, let's start with Mayor Pro Tem, Leaks May.
I just want to further reiterate how appreciative I am for the city clerk's office and all the volunteers for a great primary election season, and for always being willing to learn ways in which to make the process transition even more in a smoother fashion. So I appreciate that and looking forward to helping in November. And in addition to that, congratulations, Officer Lemke. That's it.
All right, Councilwoman Bruder James.
Not much from me today. I realized that in our thanks and acknowledgement of how well the election went, I don't think we remembered to thank DPW. They do so much setup and behind the scenes work. I really wanted to highlight that. That was something I didn't quite realize until I showed up at 6 a.m. and there was so much already set up for us. And they continued to deliver donuts, and I think even later in the day delivered some more food. So thank you to their work on all that. And same goes for the police department. I know a couple of police officers were checking in on precincts. I know I saw Officer Mullmeister at Precinct 4, so I just wanted to thank all of the city departments. There may even be others involved that I'm not aware of. This is really a team effort throughout the city to get it done successfully. The other thing I wanted to mention is Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. As you may know, I am our delegate to SEMCOG for Ferndale. And there is a kind of a public input survey that has just gone out. I think it was earlier today, where anybody, any resident can fill out this survey to let SEMCOG know what your priorities are. So I will post this on my council Facebook page. I encourage my colleagues to share it. I'll try to share it around to get it to as many Ferndale residents as possible. The more that we can influence SEMCOG on what our priorities are as a community, the more we can connect and work with other cities in Southeast Michigan to lift up those priorities and work together as a region to accomplish all of our goals. So please help me in that by filling out the survey. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, and finally, Councilwoman Mikulski.
Well, I just wanted to continue our tour of thanks. The police department met with me, the night shift met with me on election night, and they were fantastic. They were very informative. They obviously, our police does a great job. I think the vast majority of people within Ferndale would agree and would say that they support our police department. And I just wanted to give them kudos for the job that they've done. It's been, like you said, it's been a rough week. There's a lot that's happening, and it's been a rough month or two. So great job. And thank you in particular to Chief Palazzolo for taking time to talk to me as well.
All right, thank you. And I have a couple comments, and I'm just going to read over here my monitor. I have two, so if you see me shift my eyes. I just wanted to remind folks, as I've heard from residents and seen comments on social media, people worried about friends and family potentially getting evicted from their homes. And this is definitely a concern as some of the federal benefits and the eviction moratorium are ended. And so I just want to know that Oakland County is offering up to 3 months of past due rent, mortgage, and utility payments as a result of temporary job loss, reduction work hours, or other income hardship caused by the pandemic. And the deadline to apply for one of these grants through the CARES Act funds, just how this is being funded, is August 30th. There will be another round from October 1st through November 30th. But you can go to the oaklandcounty.gov website and evictions diversion program and get information about how to apply, what is required in terms of paperwork to apply, and talk to a housing counselor. We also have another housing resource center that is also providing funding assistance, but with limited dollars, but they're still out there and can connect you to resources. And that is the Community Housing Network. And you can go to the communityhousingnetwork.org, and on their homepage is the eviction diversion program information. Along with everybody else, I wanted to say thank you to our police officers for your hard work in keeping our community safe. It's important that council members, and I know some of our new members haven't done it yet, but I encourage them to do that, is to do a ride along. The 11 years I've been an elected official for Ferndale, I've done a ride along, and every year I learn something new. I learned about the perspective of our police officers performing their job, and I'm an open book. They can ask me anything about being on council or decision making and what we're looking forward towards, and growing and expanding, growing and having conversations about policing in our community. And just wanted to thank our police officers to being dedicated to Ferndale. And then poll workers. We have a need for younger poll workers to step up and be part of the civic process of democracy, particularly as a lot of older poll workers are opting out for pandemic safety reasons. For November, we saw that in our latest primary. And so this is a perfect opportunity for young folks who want to learn how elections work and be a poll worker during the precincts. And I was able to meet one of our newest poll workers, not even 18 yet, and they're still allowed to help work the polls. So I encourage everyone to encourage a young person to get involved. And finally, I just wanted to talk about mask wearing and supporting our businesses and going in their masks. Again, I think it's really honorable that Ferndale is overall complying with the mask wearing orders. We always hear about a couple cases here and there. We had it during our voting day, where some people don't wear masks and people are responding, directly and kindly in these manners. And I just want to say thank you for everybody who is complying, because when we get complacent or there's an act of carelessness in wearing a mask, that it impacts the entire community. And it creates anxiety for people who may be vulnerable, and people just want to be safe. And when you wear a mask, you are signaling to others that you care about them and that you want them to be safe too. So please continue showing compassion and kindness by doing your part and protecting yourself and others by wearing a mask. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about getting off social media. I've heard from quite a few residents who are burnt out and feeling like they are not heard or included as part of the community, or ostracized when they're on social media, and feel a little bit of bullying. And I know that's very difficult to manage while on social media and being engaged and a part of, but also feeling like you're not included or you're not being heard. And I think that's just the nature of social media in some ways. And so I'm encouraging folks to reach out and actually make human connections by phone or in person, and take some time to get off of social media, stop reading the news, taking a mind break, and finding some meditative moments in which you can honor yourself and provide self-care, and stepping away from the social unrest, the noise, so that you are more calm and healthier, not only with yourself, but your family, friends, and the community. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, tonight for all of the public comment. And I am calling this meeting at 10:21. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.